Okay.
I'm gonna tell our guests.
Oh, that's not you.
See,
Oh, I can hear you now.
we can hear you, we can see you.
Okay, I can see myself.
Yeah, but we can't see you. That's the most important part. By the way, we're live, I think. I'm gonna check with our guest. We're having some technical difficulties.
The volume is that much more chopped up. It's worse than what it was. Now, and for some reason, I can't see you guys.
It's your
Oh,
connection.
hang on, it's loading for me.
Yeah.
Your connection is. It's not.
Are you on a Mac or a PC?
He can't hear us. His connection is crap.
I can. Yeah. Hang on. Am I coming in choppy or am I coming in clear?
You're coming in.
You're coming
clear.
in okay.
Okay.
You're clear.
But I'm gonna tell our guests. I promise Ali that I'm gonna blame this on him. Because I told Ellie.
Okay, now it should be clear.
Yes. Oh. Okay, there you are.
Let's see. I was gonna blame it all on it.
All right, so I can see you guys, but in terms of the volume, it's coming in really choppy.
Can you understand what we're saying?
I did right there. You asked me if do you understand what we're saying?
Yes. Can you reduce my volume so that I don't have to hear myself because you don't have a headset?
Or do you have a headset, Farhan?
No, I already asked him that.
Okay.
This is all Ali's fault, by the way, everybody, because I told Ali that we need to start the call half an hour early with our guests so that we could fix everything. Ali said 20 minutes is fine.
We did. The extra 10 minutes, I don't know if that would have been. But let's see if we can. Farhan, I can hear you okay.
Yeah, and Luis,
it's Luis. You're coming in perfect, Ali.
Said that she can hear us. Okay, what about me? Do you hear me?
A little bit. Yeah, hang on.
You're clear. That's the only thing that. Yeah, you're fine. Yeah, you're fine.
To me, by the way, both of you guys are totally clear.
To me, both of you are fine as well. And what I hear is what the guests hear, so it doesn't matter. As long as you understand the general questions that I'm asking, you should be fine.
Nothing.
So you can you hear Ali?
Yeah. Well, can you hear me? Okay.
No, I can't understand a word you're saying, Armin.
What about me? Can you hear me? Ali, can you hear me?
Now you're choppy too.
You're completely clear to us for some reason. This is so weird.
This is something from your end because we can hear you properly.
Do you have like a 5G or something else you can connect to?
Can you connect to it with wire rather than wireless?
Hang on, it says that my speakers are muted.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Testing. This is why you need a headset.
Okay, hang on.
Oh god. All right, guests. While we're doing this, ask us.
It says at the bottom of the screen, speakers muted. That might be the reason why. How do I unmute my speakers?
Okay, so I'll tell you what to do. Go to the Skype. You know where it says Skype. Go there. There's going to be an audio and video settings.
Okay, I'm gonna move to same.
So for audio and video settings, choose the speakers that you want and choose the microphone you want, which will probably be the internal laptop or whatever computer speakers.
Sorry guys, sorry people in the.
Hold on, Armin. Let's set this up.
I'm gonna have to tell our people.
Armin, hold on. Let's just set this up. You're delaying it more.
All right, this is getting annoying.
Just go to your Skype settings. When you go to Skype, it says the audio video settings, and when you open that tab, it's gonna have your camera.
I hear the settings. Hang on.
We're live, by the way, right now.
Yeah. There's gonna be microphone. There's gonna be speakers.
Okay, here's the settings. All right, general. Suggestions. Share, look at audio, video.
So there's gonna be speakers tab.
Oh, here it goes.
Yeah.
Testing.
Is this testing? Can you hear us now?
Yeah.
I can sort of hear the froggy like voices.
I'm telling our patrons that in the live chat that I'm blaming you, Ali.
Okay, I might have to switch to the other computer.
Really?
Maybe.
Right now we have to
Yeah,
switch?
I'm gonna see if that works better because otherwise we won't be able to do this.
Is
right?
there any way? Is there any way for? Hang on, unmute.
Let me switch my thing to the other Mac. Lish, can I switch? Can I switch over?
How would that make any difference?
Because I'm just wondering. I'm wondering if it's on my side. I mean, I can hear both of you clearly. That's an issue.
No, if he can't
Right.
hear me either, it has nothing to do with you. It's with him.
No, but he can hear me.
Yeah, but
Right.
then it has nothing to do with your computer then.
Yeah. You,
He can't hear
All right,
us.
so I put it. I don't know if it's saved though. Hang on, let
Can
me
you-
get out.
can you
Let
hear
me
us?
get out of this now.
hold on,
One
Armin.
second.
Let him figure it out. It's okay. Otherwise, it'll take longer.
Okay, it says my speakers are not muted anymore.
Can you hear us?
Okay.
then?
Can you hear us? Can you hear us?
A little bit, but you guys sound like my.
Wait,
It's
I
fine.
can hear it on the speakers.
It's fine.
It sounds really choppy.
As long as you
Right back
understand what
to
we're
muted
saying.
again.
What?
Yeah, that's something. Do you want to do it on your phone? Do you have a phone that you can do Skype on?
Yeah, I might just do it on my phone. There's no way to do it through Zoom or anything, right?
Just do it on
No,
your phone.
Okay.
because we're
Let
doing
me
live
try- all right,
broadcasting.
let me try to get it on my phone.
So we're gonna have to hang
Okay,
up.
let me-
Just
yeah,
close
let
down
me-
Skype on your computer completely.
No, don't.
Let me
That
try
way
my
it'll-
phone real quick. That might be better.
Just kick. He doesn't hear what you were saying. Just kick. Maybe kick
Yeah.
him out of this chat. Remove
Oh,
from.
he'll hang up.
No, remove.
Yeah, I think my phone's probably gonna work better.
Okay. Mike is saying we can pray. Let's pray.
All right, let me try my phone. All right,
All right.
All right, cool.
I'm gonna try my phone real quick.
Okay, hang up and let's call. Let's do the phone.
I thought you were a YouTuber. What happened?
Because he uses Google Hangouts, right? Google Hangouts is usually a lot better. Skype is very glitchy.
How does a YouTuber not have a headset? He can't hear us, right? I can say anything.
Well, now I can.
Okay, and now that he's gone, I'm going to tell all our patrons, again, to whoever's joining us now, this is all Ali's fault. I told him, we need
Yeah.
to start half an hour early. He told me, don't worry, it's going to be fine. We don't have to start half an hour early. This guy's a YouTuber. And look what happened, right? This is the second time in a row.
from my side, we started 20 minutes early and everything was fine. And then I went for a bio break, and then I come back, and then suddenly the whole thing is.
Yeah. So, and he
mess.
doesn't even have a headset. Don't you tell our guests that they need to have a headset? Did you tell him?
I do. I tell everybody. I'm like, you're gonna need a headset, mic, and laptop, and that's really all you need.
Ah,
All right, that's way better. That's way better. All right.
it's way better
you
for
back?
you, but we can't hear.
Oh, but do you have earphones with your thing?
With my phone, it's the iPhone. There's nothing to plug into it.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Your hand
but
was
I can-
your hand was covering the mic. Don't cover the mic anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
There it goes.
Okay,
Alright.
we can hear you. This is
All right.
okay.
This is good.
This is not
This
that good,
works?
but it's fine.
Okay, hopefully this works.
All right.
Okay, should we start?
Go for it.
All right. Okay, now the thing is, so the way this is, it's for our patrons. This is a live stream on video, so they get all the dirt, and it's all very entertaining. But for the live audio, it's actually going to start when I start right now, the actual recorded podcast that's going to go out. Okay?
Cool.
All right, welcome everybody to another episode of Secular Jihadists for a Muslim Enlightenment. My name is Ali Rizvi. With me is Armin Navabi. And we actually have a very special guest today who came to my attention through Abdullah Samir, who's a previous guest, and he knows you pretty well. And this is Farhan Qureshi. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Ali Rizvi, and definitely shout out to Abdullah Samir. Thanks for hooking us up. And
Yeah.
good dude.
Ali, if you call all our guests a very special guest, then it will lose all mean. The word
Well, that's
special, it will.
a lot of our guests are very special. There are a few who I haven't called special,
Okay.
but they're very special.
So
too. I
people
just wanna-
notice which one of our guests Ali doesn't call special. Those are the shittiest guests that we have.
Of course.
Okay.
So Farhan, so just starting out, Farhan was raised in an Ahmadi Muslim family, so he's part of the Ahmadiyya tradition. That's that sect of Islam. But then he left Ahmadiyyat and he became a devout mainstream Sunni Muslim for I think close to a decade, right? Farhan?
Right, close to
And
a decade.
yeah, and during that time you were very engaged. You did a lot of public debates. So you specifically debated a lot of Christian scholars like James White and David Wood. And David Wood, I think, is pretty well known. And then you gave that up. And you now describe yourself as a spiritual Hindu mystic, free-thinking, agnostic theist. So you do describe yourself as Hindu. And you are a YouTuber who's pretty prominent. You've got like something like I think 19,000, 20,000 followers or subscribers on YouTube. So your message is getting around. You certainly have caught the attention of people like Abdullah Samir and some of the other friends that I know who've recommended you for this. And I just thought it was fascinating that you sort of went from Ahmadiyyat and then you went to mainstream Sunni Islam. Then you gave that up, and then now you identify as Hindu, but not really. More of a sort of spiritual. Is there such a thing as a Sufi Hindu in a way? But
it's all within the realm of mysticism, right? It's all within the realm of mysticism.
Yeah. So describe that journey. What happened? How did you start, and what drove you through all of these different ways? Can you start sort of with your childhood, how you were raised, and how your journey went from there?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I was, well, first of all, born and raised in the United States. And I want to also just really just appreciate Ali Rizvi, your conversation with Joe Rogan. I'm a huge fan of Joe Rogan, so it's so cool to see you speak with him in person. But anyways, so yeah, back into the journey or whatever. Born and raised in the United States to a Pakistani family, so exposed to nothing but multiculturalism, liberal media, that sort of thing. So that was kind of my upbringing, while still being conditioned and indoctrinated with religion, right? So my grandfather was a missionary in Africa for 20 years. And so in a sense, there was an aspiration to also be a missionary for the Ahmadiyya community. For myself, and maybe you've heard of Nabil Qureshi or not, I know that he had also aspired to.
So Nabil Qureshi is also, I mean, he's also, he used to be part of the Ahmadiyya community and now he's Christian?
So he's passed away. He passed
okay.
away from cancer about last year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's, yeah.
Wait,
So
so
he was-
Ahmadis actually try to convert people. Like, aren't they supposed to let everybody be? What's the deal with that? Like, they're actually trying to convert people back to their religion?
Right. So they believe that their founder, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, was the promised Messiah, meaning he was the second coming of Jesus and the Imam Mahdi. And
Just
basically-
merging all the messiahs into one person, basically.
exactly.
Right.
Very similar to the Baha'i faith, right?
Right.
I mean,
Right. Right.
So it's similar to that, but it's more Islamic than the Baha'i faith in the sense that they pray 5 times a day. The Salah is pretty much a Hanafi, methodology that they follow. The women wear hijab, they face Mecca when they pray. So they consider themselves Muslim. They consider Muhammad to be Khatam an-Nabiyyin in the sense that he was the best prophet of all time. And so they claim to be Muslim. They practice Islam. They believe that Mirza Ghulam Ahmad was a reformer in the second coming of Jesus. The whole idea behind it is that it makes absolutely no sense that a man is going to fly down from the sky at the end of times. There's a prophecy about Jesus returning. And so therefore somebody must spiritually fulfill this prophecy rather than literally Jesus coming back. And there was an Indian scholar by the name of Sir Syed Ahmad Khan, founder of the Aligarh University, very prominent in the late 1800s. He was also a rationalist and a reformer within the context of the Muslim world in India. And Sir Syed Ahmad Khan had actually argued that according to the Quran, Jesus was dead. And Mirza Ghulam Ahmad kind of took on these arguments and said that not only is Jesus dead, but I'm the second coming. And so there's this entire narrative. There's many positive aspects to the Reformation that Mirza Ghulam Ahmad attempted, but again, I mean, I think that personally I'm just disillusioned by individuals claiming to be prophets, messiahs, and that sort of thing for themselves in general. I think that there's individuals who have perceptions, genuine perceptions, and there's behavior and language and expression that follows that.
So,
and that's what Mirza Ghulam Ahmad does. But in a nutshell, he claims to be the second coming of Jesus.
What convinced you to go from that to traditional Sunni Islam?
Yeah, like when you so you were raised that way. When did you start getting conscious of this and start reading about, or actually getting into it to the extent that you decided to go for more mainstream?
Right. So I would. The Ahmadiyya community is a missionary community. So think about Christian missionaries like evangelicals, Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses. They're very much interested in converting people because they believe that they have the truth or whatever. And so in matter of fact, Ahmadiyya can be credited to a lot of the debate tactics against Christians that we found with like Sheikh Ahmadiyyat and Zakir Naik. These arguments about Deuteronomy 18:18 and the Comforter, these were actually being made by Ahmadis in early polemics that were being made between Christians and Muslims back.
What would they debate? Like, these debates usually sound very funny to me because they're basically arguing which myth is more true, and they're all basically using nonsense and no real evidence to back up their arguments. It's just very fun. To me, when I listen to them debating, it sounds like kids fighting over superheroes and stuff like that. Like, what is the discussion like between Christians?
So the debates were, is Muhammad prophesied in the Bible? Is the same? Is it a Trinity type of deal? What did Jesus claim according to the Bible? Is Muhammad prophesied in the Bible? These were the types of debates that they were having.
Right.
Well, I mean, it reminds me of the Ahmadiyyat that you mentioned. Ahmadiyyat, yeah. He was in the 80s. He was really big, so he used to debate Christians all the time about whether was Jesus crucified or what happened with the Garden of Eden. And it was kind of interesting that it was sort of like to me it sounded a lot like what Armin's saying. It's something like seemed like okay, they're talking about
it's kind of like saying Iron Man versus Batman, who would win that fight. Right. It's kind of like coming up with a very detailed analysis of their powers.
But Armin, the thing is like, and in this case, like they both believe that they have the truth, right? So they're arguing about which it is. And I remember actually running into my family. We were at Umrah in Mecca, so we ended up meeting Ahmadiyyat at a restaurant in Mecca. And I remember my dad was a big fan of him, so he went and he said hello and all of it. But he was like a rock star at the time because he was a very, very good debater.
Yeah, but that's what I'm arguing. They're not good debaters. They're good at making bullshit sound like very intelligent discussions.
So Farhan, there you go. There's your. Yeah.
Well, I think to be fair, when theologians discuss theology, they have a way to approach the text that they're approaching. When it comes to interpreting prophecies, historically, Muslims and Christians have debated prophecies and doctrines for a very long time. So it's no surprise in terms of, is this model obsolete? I would agree with Armin. I think that it's an obsolete model of trying to debate the meaning of doctrines and prophecies that are utterly ambiguous to begin with.
Right.
So I'm not. I wouldn't equate it to Batman versus Superman because it's theological interpretations of texts.
Well, so is that like you have the canon of the superheroes? There's details there's a lot of details in the world. Like it's not. If you look at some of these fictional worlds that we create, like Harry Potter world or Star Wars world, they are very complex and detailed as well. Like it's not that I'm not dismissing it as chaotic, just not random nonsense. I understand that there's an order to it, that there's a system to it, there's a system. I mean, imagine if Star Wars was. People were arguing the world of Star Wars instead of like, I don't know how many years Star Wars has been around. But imagine if people were building that world for 1400 years. How much detail would be in that world? How much detail would be in Harry Potter? Like even right now, I'm impressed by how much detail is in the Harry Potter world. But imagine if writers were writing about the Harry Potter world for 1400 years. There would be so much detail and it wouldn't be chaotic. There's an internal logic a structure within that world, but that doesn't mean you could be impressed by all the structure and all the internal logic, consistent logic within that world, but that doesn't give any credibility to the fact that that world is real in any at all. You know what I mean? But they try to impress. But the difference between Harry Potter and religion is that the religious people point out that how much internal logic is within the structure of their world, and they try to use that as proof that that this world is real. Like, how could all of this be nonsense?
They believe there's a claim to truth, the central claim to. That's another big difference between the stuff is the religious stuff. There's a central claim to truth. So when we're talking about it as objective observers and we're looking at it as skeptics, yes, of course, it seems there's no difference between Harry Potter versus Star Wars or Islam versus Christianity. But when you actually, if you are on one of those sides, you believe that's the truth. And to your point, actually, Farhan, I think one place where what you're saying is important, and this is one thing that that in my experience where the Ahmadiyya Muslims have been well ahead of it, is they have been arguing Islamic apologetics, like the actual academic field of Islamic apologetics, for a very, very long time, like preceding many of the mainstream Sunni Muslims who've never really been able to challenge on it because they've been out there proselytizing and debating. And one thing that the Ahmadiyya did was they started this whole idea about Islam is not a doctrine of violence. Jihad is not supposed to be the holy war. It's an internal struggle. All of that stuff, these arguments, they've been making for well before the mainstream Sunnis started, like pretty much like in just the last few decades. And I noticed this, when I was writing.
I mean, before the Reform movement, the modern Reform movement.
Everything, all this stuff about Islam's a religion of peace and everything. I mean, the Ahmadiyya people have been saying this for ever since the dawn of Ahmadiyyat, because that was the reinterpretation.
And the Baha'is as well.
Or anyway, Farhan.
Yeah, it was an attempt at reformation. Yeah. For example, they also, a part of my skepticism and rationalism is influenced by my Ahmadiyya upbringing. My rejection of miracles, for example, I don't think that there's any supernatural miracles. I'm skeptical of miracle claims and stuff like that. They try to they accept evolution. They try to interpret the Quran to conform to science. I think these are major steps at reformation. And he claimed to be a reformer. Yeah, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad did, which I think is great. I'm just again disillusioned by the whole claim to be the Messiah and these prophecies and all this type of stuff.
What convinced you to go from that to, again, I ask this question, to traditional Sunni Islam? Like, what was it?
Right. So I remember being a teenager and going to Sunni masajid, right? And having a spiritual connection to the way, to the discipline, to the qira'at and the tajweed of the Sunni Muslim, to the knowledge and the ilm of the texts in the hadith and the sunnah and the Quran. I felt there was much more of a scholarly understanding of the tradition. And I was, again, you have to understand that Sunni Muslims and mainstream Muslims believe that Muhammad was Khatam al-Nabiyyin, the last or the seal of the prophets, as they interpret it. And I was disillusioned by individuals in general claiming to be messiahs and prophets and the second coming of Jesus and that sort of thing.
But Muhammad was one of them.
Right, he was. So now in retrospect, I'm able to view these individuals who had these claims about themselves quite differently from a psychological and yet a spiritual standpoint. But that's me now, right? Back then, the issue was that Ahmadiyya and mainstream Islam, they were ultimately, that traditional Islam was more of a scholarly and pure version of Islam, whereas Ahmadiyyat would seem to be an attempt to change the religion. Exactly.
Bid'ah. It was bid'ah.
It was bid'ah. It was you have to take the claim that Mirza Ghulam Ahmad was the second coming of Jesus seriously, and that's a very difficult one to do.
Right.
But he was a great reformer in a sense. But yeah, and that's in retrospect. Though.
I mean, again, if they're trying to impress you with all the like books and all the details of their quote unquote scholarly work, is the traditional Sunni Islam, they have a lot more to show. So I mean, again, this is the problem. But actually, instead of just looking at if something makes sense or not, just looking at if something looks logical or not, right? Because if you do that, I mean, Sunni Islam has a lot more to offer. I mean, they have libraries, like thousands of libraries of books to fill with all their stuff. Like, I don't think newer religions don't have that much years of material behind them. Was that what impressed you? Like, because of the amount of so-called academic work that they have?
The extent of literature. I mean, I wouldn't say so, because Ahmadis adopt pretty much the tradition of the 1400 years of Islamic development. They'll honor people like Abu Hanifa and Hamid al-Ghazali and Jalaluddin Rumi and a lot of their works and commentaries from the past, and they'll try to use those texts, in a matter of fact, to prove that Mirza Ghulam Ahmad was the second coming of Jesus, right, that was prophesied. So I mean, I don't think that it was the extent of literature that impressed me as much as it was the discipline and the tajweed and what the Sunni Muslim community was offering spiritually. And so that comes into a disagreement that you and I are going to have at some point probably in this conversation, is that I value not only Muslims but the tradition of Islam,
right?
And so that's probably a difference that you and I have.
And actually, one of the things about Ahmadiyyat, right?
Can I get into that? Because he brought up the tradition of Islam.
No. I want to just clarify one thing, is that, for people, when we're talking about the heresy aspect or bringing in innovation, the Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, when he came and he made the claims of prophethood or of being a messiah or being the second coming of Jesus, he didn't come with his own new book that was supposed to be from God. He stuck to the Quran. So the Quran is still there. It's still the crux of all of this. So it wasn't like he was a new prophet of the book. And I think that's one of the distinctions he made. He said, yes, the prophet Muhammad was the last prophet who got the revealed message of Allah in the form of the Quran, and we are sticking to that. I am just a sort of a supplemental prophet in that sense.
So the problem is that the use of the word prophet makes you hated by every other Muslim. Like, if you just said I was a Messiah or of the Mahdi, people are like, meh, okay, you're just like crazy like the Shias. But if you say I'm a prophet, then you're challenging one of the most fundamental parts of most other Islam, which is that Muhammad was the last prophet. Not just the last prophet with the Quran, which is not just the most important prophet, the last prophet. So you can't just say like I'm a prophet. So that makes you hated by most other Muslims. Anyways, what do you mean by traditional Islam?
Traditional meaning Islam as it's developed over the years.
Traditions of Islam, sorry.
Through various scholars and folk, the various scholars and imams and alims and saints and sages that may have appeared within Islam and contributed towards its development of expression. So, all right, so here's what I mean. To come into a nutshell, is what I appreciate is that Muslims can gain a tremendous character and discipline from the tradition of Islam. This has nothing to do with truth claims or whether Islam is true or not. It's what I experience in the masajid and of the community, is that I value that Muslims who are a part of the Muslim community were inspired towards the message that was positive, inclusive often, and not polarizing the way that mainstream media attempts to say when they show certain.
Give me an example.
So Sheikh Hamza Yusuf is a prime example, right? Anybody who's in the congregation.
But you're talking about Muslims, though. I'm talking about. Give me examples of Islam.
Of Islam. So yeah. So these Muslims ultimately use and justify the Quran and the Sunnah for the positive teachings that they derive from the tradition of Islam.
And they wouldn't have without Islam?
No, they certainly could.
Okay, so to me it seems it's such an insult to many Muslims to say that these people are getting together and doing good things because of Islam. To me, I feel insulted on their behalf, because to me it suggests that these people would have not cared to build communities, to help each other out, to get together unless they had Islam. I see more. I have more faith in people. I guess faith, using that word loosely, but I have more confidence in the goodness of people to know that if you took Islam away from them, I think most of those people would have still contributed to the community or to the surrounding in way. It wasn't because of Islam that they did that.
I don't disagree with what you said there, Armin. But the reality of the situation is that Islam is a tradition that's developed within the history of the Middle East and in the world in general.
So was slavery.
Right. And but what does that doesn't mean that Islam has nothing positive to offer to those that follow it, right?
Is the positive, the so-called positive parts of Islam is actually a problem with it because those so-called positive parts of Islam are things that we don't need Islam to achieve, and by contributing it to Islam is it comes with a lot of nonsense and a lot of
well, let's take something like Farhan, let's take an example of something that is positive, like you're saying, the positive things.
I mean, there's a bunch of you could go hygiene, you could go, honoring your parents or whatever positive
stuff that was there before.
Hold on, Armin.
Right,
go ahead.
And I don't disagree that it's not possible outside of the context of Islam, and it's not that it was there before, during, or after another context. What I'm saying is that there are human beings who are Muslim, like my parents, like so many Muslims that I know, like somebody like Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, who are able to adopt the tradition of Islam and have a completely normal life and contribute positively to the world, and they'll say that it's their faith in Islam and faith in Allah that helps them develop this. Now, I'm not disagreeing with you that it's the human nature that's ultimately bringing this out in them, but what they'll do from a psychological standpoint, just like the extremists do, is that this particular temperament is going to go towards verses and hadith and rhetoric, and there's a lot of it in Islam. It's not like it's only a little bit, or the majority of Islam is evil and dark.
They'll attribute it to it. They'll attribute it to the religion.
Okay, but that's completely missing. I mean, nobody's denying. I don't know if anybody sane is denying that most Muslims are good people. Okay, nobody. No,
Armin, we're not talking about that. We're saying that.
I understand. Okay, but let me. But nobody's. The another thing is that a lot of people are like, well, these people are doing good things and they're attributing it to Islam, and that's a problem, because Islam is not they are doing good things and they're giving credit to somewhere where credit is not due. Like this does not deserve any credit. In fact,
we all agree on that. We all agree.
He
Farhan's
doesn't.
saying the same thing.
No, he doesn't.
Okay. So there's a little difference. What I'm saying is that the religion of Islam, the tradition of Islam, itself has inherent within it teachings that can contribute towards the progress of individuals who happen to be Muslim.
Even if they're unoriginal.
Right. They can focus on verses and morals and principles that help them develop, that can give them discipline, that can give them faith in something bigger.
That's a problem with the methodology of coming up with good teachings, right? Mm-hmm. The problem is that if you could get good teachings, if from a source that makes logical sense, if you get the same good teachings from a source that does not make logical sense, the problem is that source will not be consistent with regards to the results that you're going to get out of it. Like the friend of us, Drew, we took his analogy and we ran with it. I say, like, if you have a napkin that says on it a message, and I interpret the message in a good way and Ali in a bad way, and you say, like, look, we can all follow the napkin and follow Armin's way because Armin is getting a good message out of it. Let's encourage Armin's reading of the napkin. But I'm telling you, no, this is not a good. Don't encourage me to get good messages out of the napkin, because a lot of people are doing that good thing without reading the napkin. In fact, we should be telling people to not follow random napkins that they find in the street. That's retarded. Sorry, that's stupid. Okay, if you continue endorsing following messages on napkins that you find in restaurants, one day somebody is going to read a napkin that says go behead your fucking parents. Okay, just you don't encourage me because I'm getting only positive message out of it. Put the fucking napkins away. So, this is why you do these good things.
The whole idea, I think, over here, and then this part I agree with Armin on, is that it's not about the message itself, whether it's good or bad.
Right.
It's about the process by which you're arriving at that conclusion. So, for instance, if you're getting it through revelation, that, this is what the napkin said, or this is what the book said, or this is whatever, then, you can follow it, and it's a good message, and then suddenly, you're to the rest of the world, just, I guess, phenotypically, everybody's looking at you, and you're a good person. You're doing really good things. You're contributing positively to society. The reason you're doing that, though, the process you went through to arrive at that conclusion was that there's a revelation that you believed in that said that you should do that good thing. That's why you're the good person. But if you follow that method, and if you give any legitimacy to that method, or if you revere that method of being able to get to truths, or get to certain practices, or the way that you want to live, or to get to your morality, then the problem is that method, if someone says something wrong and someone misinterprets it, you don't, or not misinterprets it, but someone can use that same method to get you to do really terrible things, right? And
right. The methodology matters more than
if the process is sacred, you can't argue against the
exactly
process.
The process, figuring out the right.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Figuring out the right. I'll just add one example, right? Like astrology, right? Doesn't hurt people, right? But it's nonsense. We all agree it's nonsense. Right. But it doesn't hurt anybody. There's no wars in the name of zodiac signs and stuff like that, right? But
as a Gemini, I'm supposed to be very skeptical of astrology.
Okay. So, but the thing is that it's if we don't challenge the nonsense like that because people are having fun with it and it doesn't hurt anybody. The thing is that same line of thinking will lead you to think that maybe vaccines cause autism, right? Okay. Which is harmful. So I'm just saying, like, we don't try to endorse certain conclusions because that's not a very effective way. We try to endorse certain processes of getting the truth rather than just looking at the end where people are ending up at.
I feel like we're talking a lot in
Sorry. I'll shut up.
I want to let you go ahead.
I'll shut
up. Let me say this. I don't disagree that we shouldn't challenge nonsense. We should constantly challenge nonsense. We should criticize truth claims, criticize religion,
right?
And continue to do so that people can refine their perspective and come closer to what we aspire to come close to, which is truth.
Right.
And so I'm all for challenging religion and dogma and superstition and all of these types of things. Truth claims with insufficient evidence, all of that sort of thing. So I'm 100% with you there. What I think where we're disagreeing is this black and white way of looking at Islam. We're not even talking about Muslims who could potentially be good people, but we have this black and white way of looking at Islam. And the way that I perceive all religions and all political ideologies and all of human history is that it's imperfect, and it's okay for it to be imperfect. And what we have to do is learn from our mistakes collectively, take what works and build upon what works and refine our perspective. And I think all religions and political ideologies need to do that. And that is a very liberal stance, right? That change is necessary, evolution is necessary. The ideas are corrigible, meaning that we can change our understanding of these ideas. In the same way that the United States Constitution, between Republicans and Democrats, you have Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio complaining that the liberals want to look at the Constitution as a living and breathing document, whereas they want to interpret it as the founding fathers of America had interpreted it. And I'm all with the liberals. It is a living and breathing document that can and should evolve. And there's nothing blasphemous about that. Well, and I think if we look at the entire, listen, we've evolved in every category: politics, philosophy, science, culture. why can't we evolve our perspective in trying to understand spirituality in traditional religion?
Why can't we evolve to get rid of it? I mean, you endorse change. You endorse being liberal. I will endorse my. You should also be liberal enough to accept my version of evolving, which is to annihilate Islam or other religions.
But I want to bring up. Sorry, Farhan, finish what you were saying, and then
sorry.
go ahead.
No, I think that I absolutely think that there should be voices that are critical of religion and should be saying that, you know what, that this is nonsense, this is BS, etc. So I'm all about that, and I think that Armin's voice and any other voice that argue similarly are necessary parts of the conversation.
Right.
I think in terms of getting rid of quote unquote religion, okay, you get rid of dogmatism, fanaticism, tribalism. That's great. One thing you cannot get rid of is the human brain, and it is in the human brain in which spirituality naturally emerges amongst various temperaments throughout the species. And there are some people who are more inclined towards those spiritual perceptions. The people who are purely logical and might not appreciate the abstract, might not appreciate the expressive. There's a place for those types of minds and voices as well. But you cannot eliminate the spiritual perceptions that human beings have.
So I would agree with that. I'd probably use a different term than spiritual, but I completely get the connotation. I get what you're saying, and I do agree that there's a different plane and of expression. I appreciate that as well. The only thing I wanted to talk about is from what you said is when you're saying, you know, the Constitution, living, breathing document, and religion should be able to evolve as well. So one really key difference between religion versus any political ideology versus the U.S. Constitution is this element of infallibility and inerrancy. And it's not just infallibility and inerrancy. It's actually in the Abrahamic religions, all of them, and we see it more practiced in Islam nowadays in this time than and we saw it practiced in other Abrahamic religions before. Is anytime you have innovation, evolution, change, updates, new ways of thinking, there are words for that, and those words are heresy, blasphemy, apostasy, right? So so all of this is discouraged, and it's discouraged to the extent where the consequences of it are very, very dire if you do these things. So bringing any kind of innovation into it. So that's made it difficult. I mean, one example that I gave, as you know, when I was writing my book, and by the way, my arguments with Ahmadiyya apologists actually really helped write the book as well. So that's one reason I'm aware of the way that they go about things. But anyway, is that I talked about Thomas Jefferson versus Muhammad. So Thomas Jefferson, in his 40s, you know, he had Sally Hemings, you know, the 14-year-old girl who was his slave. So he was a slave owner, and he had sex with a child, right? And he had kids with her. Muhammad did the same thing. He was in his 50s. He married a child. He had sex with her when she was 9, consummated all that stuff. So they both had that. And Muhammad also owned slaves, and so did Thomas Jefferson. But in this day and age, if there was anybody, you know, people give Thomas Jefferson a pass because they say, well, you know, it was at that time, it was accepted. But if Thomas Jefferson was making claims of infallibility and inerrancy, and there were people to this day saying, no, what Thomas Jefferson did was right, and we defended because Sally Hemings matured early at that time, you treated your slaves well, so slavery was justified. If they started doing that, people would not give Thomas Jefferson a pass. Right? So that difference, when you bring in infallibility, when you bring in the concept of inerrancy, then any kind of reform, any kind of innovation, any kind of change, evolution just becomes a crime that's punishable in a lot of cases by death, right? And it's a mortal sin. So how would you square that? Isn't that a key difference that really, really changes the whole story, the infallibility, inerrancy thing?
No, I think that you're totally on point, Ali. And that is the precise area in which the religions need, if there's traditional interpretations of religions, they need to be able to see that this is a 7th century Arabian perception and interpretation of reality. In any religion is an ancient and oftentimes archaic attempt at reality and spirituality. If you're able to see it within its time frame, that this is where human beings were back then, right? And of course, Muhammad believed this. Of course, you know, Jesus taught this way because of the context. And so you're no longer looking at religion from the perspective that it needs to be infallible, even if it claims to be infallible. You're simply looking at it as one of many human endeavors that is in many ways obsolete, in other ways
But
is
who is looking at it that way, though?
right. So traditionalists, right?
Okay.
So the traditionalist refuses change. They hate change. It is a traditionalist perspective to refuse change, and hence there's three categories of cultural ways of approaching this. There's traditionalism, there's modernism, and then there's postmodernism. And the appreciation, I think, of all three is where I stand. That we do come from a place that is that is fallible, and we're developing and evolving our perspective. That's the perspective that I think that I come from. I think Hinduism is absolutely open to this perspective, and most Hindus that I've spoken to say that, you know what, we don't have this issue of blasphemy and infallibility and inerrancy.
No, but when you have finality of the prophet, when you have this is the final book, it cannot be changed, not a word of this has been changed.
Right.
This is the book for all time. This is the prophet. This is the example to emulate for all time. Then isn't the resistance to change codified in that doctrine?
It is, but we're no longer.
How do you?
We're looking at it. I'm looking at it differently. That's from coming from the perspective of a traditionalist Muslim.
Oh no,
when a person reforms their thoughts, when a person reforms their perspective, they see this as a 7th century Arabian attempt at spirituality and discipline and morality, and they value it as sacred, no different than any other attempt.
Yeah.
Okay, but by the way, can I, with regards to black and white, you say you can't look at Islam so black and white. I think the truth and false is black and white. Well, something is either true or it's not true. There's nothing in between, okay? And also, what's not so black and white is this, people will say like, oh, you can't get rid of religion. Religion's always going to be with us. Or if you can't get rid of the brain. Well, this is not the black and white. This is where I come and say that's not black and white, because we're not talking about saving the entire human race. We're talking about winning small little battles here, right? Here and there. And we have defeated religion out of many circles, and, you know, which there are many examples where religion has been completely defeated. Okay, so it's not about like the whole fucking planet. Like we take one step at a time. But with regards to tradition, the reason why I ask you what do you mean by Islamic tradition, because there are parts of Islamic tradition that I enjoy, and I like, but the belief part is the part that I don't like. Okay,
so I agree with that. I agree with that.
So the problem when you take the belief out, when you don't believe, then there's the truth. The truth claim is out. Right. I mean, then what are you left with? You're left with the art. You're left with the architecture. You're left with interesting history. Like the way I look at Islam as fun is like maybe like a Mayan fan or a historian might look at Mayan culture, right? And they like the history. They enjoy the history. They enjoy the culture, but they don't endorse human sacrifice. Okay, so. Right. And they don't believe in the Mayan gods are real. You could still enjoy all of that. And I think a lot of people that say don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, I think like, no, get rid of the baby, keep the bathwater, because the truth claim is the belief is the main problem. If you want to keep the tradition, there's a lot of culture and tradition and art that you can keep without the truth claims.
No, I with that, but here's I agree with everything you said. I mean, except for one thing. It's being able to see the sacred in spite of the profane in our past.
Say that again.
It's our ability to perceive or appreciate the sacred in spite of the profane in our past, regardless of civilization or history.
Explain yourself.
Okay, so there's a bunch of things that our ancestors, regardless of whether they're Persian, Arab, Indian, American, African, there's a bunch of things that they got wrong, and there's a bunch of things that they did that were immoral, unethical, awful, right?
Right.
It's throughout history. And then there's a bunch of things that they did right. There's a bunch of gems of wisdom, morality, discipline, family, society, community, appreciating something bigger than yourself, spirituality, all of those things are also a part of the narrative. It's not simply all of the horrible things and the terrorism and the truth claims and the claims to infallibility and the nonsense. That's not the only thing that's there. There's a bunch of things within all civilizations, including Islam, that helped humanity progress, and it needs to continue to refine and evolve.
But look at the golden age of Arabs, right? Look at the progress that they made during that time, and look at how little it had to do with Islam. Do you know what I mean? Like, look at how, you know, it was in fact, the people that were responsible for the science and the philosophy and anything interesting, they were annoyed by being held back by the most religious people in their community. Okay, so I you know, just because it was part of the tradition of something that happened where also Islam was, to me it sounds like people trying to give credit to the culture and the art of Europe and the Enlightenment values to Christianity. Like, no, these countries just got very, very rich, and when you build an empire and you get very, very rich, you start noticing stuff other than war and killing. You start noticing poetry, you start noticing philosophy, you start noticing science. That's what rich nations do, or rich empires at that time do. But I'm just saying, it had nothing to do with Islam. Even the Mongols that were obsessed with destruction more than any other empire, even them at some point are like, hey, maybe we should start building stuff.
Lois Edwards, one of our patrons, is saying the things that help humanity progress exist in spite of religion, not because of it.
Thank you.
That probably goes for the golden age as well, in a way.
Yes.
Well, I would agree with that. That it's the human condition to want to refine, evolve, progress, and grow. We can't credit it specifically to any ideology or religion. It's the human endeavor. It's the human condition and the human endeavor. I thoroughly agree with that. But that doesn't mean that historically, throughout our evolution, that religion hasn't helped humanity in terms of social contracts, morality, criminal justice, and so on and so forth.
It held us back.
I mean,
go ahead.
21st century, though.
What?
You got to put it in. You're looking at the past from a 21st century perspective.
No. Not actually. If you look at it even not from a 21st, before Abrahamic religions, for example, the Greeks and the Romans were looking at ethics and they were looking at morality purely from a logical perspective. Right. They weren't using religion and gods. They were writing a very detailed analysis of what's ethical and what's moral, not based on what Zeus said. They were trying to figure out, like, they were asking, why is something beautiful? How do you define something is beautiful? Is this beautiful to me, or is it beautiful? Like, they were thinking about these things in great detail for hundreds of years.
Well, I was going to say the Enlightenment philosophers, as well as many of the Greek philosophers, Plato specifically, all perceived divinity, all perceived spirituality. They believed in God.
That's not what I said, though.
Spinoza, they were deists and they were pantheists.
That's not what I said, though. I didn't say they do or they don't. Some of them did, some of them didn't. I'm saying that their analysis of ethics and morality, for many of them, was completely independent from religion. Whether they believed in religious values or not, their analysis, the way they came up with these ideas or these values, was not dependent on religion. It was the Abrahamic religions that all of a sudden suggested that gods come up with. Actually, Hammurabi also did that too, so it came before.
But didn't deists, like for instance, like Spinoza and all these, so didn't they specifically, doesn't deism help you do that? It helps you actually get whatever you believe outside of your just natural, your inquiry in the natural world?
No, I mean, I think, well, first, Spinoza was more of Spinoza was a pantheist more than he was a deist.
Yeah.
Pantheist means atheist, by the way.
I don't know. I guess
it's a kind of, but anyway, go on.
Yeah. Yeah. But Immanuel Kant specifically, the whole William Lane Craig argument that morality comes from it is contingent upon the existence of a divine source. That is Immanuel Kant's argument from the Enlightenment era. So it's
yeah, but he's not part.
Sorry, Armin,
Go,
Farhan,
Sorry.
continue. Yeah.
So all that I'm saying is that the human impulse to want to understand want to understand existence and reality involves religious types of thinking. It has, and it still does. The majority of human beings perceive and interpret reality, assuming that there is some type of spiritual force behind all of this. They might be right or wrong, but this is the human condition. And my only thing is that we have to work with the human condition, allowing the skeptical, materialist, physicalist perspective to thrive as much as allowing the spiritual perspective to thrive.
Okay, so let's steer this
I really have to say, we have been at our best. Humanity has been at its best when they did not let their assumption of spirituality or any other kind of woo interfere with their analysis of reality. Mm-hmm. So whatever the majority is, we owe most of our science and most of our greatest values to that tiny portion of humanity that didn't let that kind of nonsense interfere their way of thinking.
Yeah, I think that's right. But the broader point that you're talking about, Farhan, I get it. I think what you're saying is that you're not saying it's right or wrong. You may actually completely agree with Armin here, but what it seems to me that you're saying is that human nature, like human beings, just a reality that we deal with, that the majority of human beings think that whatever that they're doing, the good that they're doing, whatever they're doing is connected to some sort of spiritual force, right? So my question is this: the secular movement, or what has religion provided people, right, that has transfixed them? So there are many things that obviously you can do. Everything that you do with religion, you could do without religion. Honoring your parents, treating orphans well. Everybody who's non-religious does the same thing. Atheists and agnostics do it all the time. They do all good. There's no good thing that people do who are religious that non-religious people don't do. Okay, or don't say. So that's something that's established. But so I guess I'll start you off with one thing. One thing that religion may contribute to people's lives, and religious people do tend to have longer life expectancies. They tend to be more satisfied and so on in life in general, is maybe a sense of community. That's maybe something that religion has brought in for people. That's a good thing. No. It's not a doctrinal thing. Hold on, Armin. No, this is actually one of the few things that has been shown by data.
It hasn't brought it. We had no community before religion. What are you talking about, Ali?
We did, but a lot of those, we're not talking just when we're talking about religion. Now we're broadening it to an adherence to some sort of spiritual connection that a whole bunch of people together believe in, right? A sense of the divine, let's say. So that's something that has provided people with community, and it's provided people with a sense of meaning, okay. Right? No, historically, that's how it's happened.
Can I say something? It hasn't provided community. It has robbed us. It has robbed community from us and monopolized it in the name of and claimed the ownership over it. No, it has not. I get it. Religion does not give us community. It has stolen community from us.
It has given people a sense of community. Yeah, go ahead.
You would agree with that nationalism serves. Would you say the same thing about nationalism?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
No, let's say the same thing about nationalism, as in that nationalism did not provide a sense of community. Did you say that?
No, I'm saying I would rather have a sense of community separate from nationalism. I wouldn't want nationalism to claim
No, not would you rather. Would you say that historically nationalism has not provided people with a sense of community and belonging?
No, I didn't say religion hasn't. I said religion has robbed it. And nationalism is a newer phenomenon, right?
No, but we're talking about whether it did or not. Now, religion, it actually has historically. We're talking about.
What I'm saying, when you say it has, as if it's is providing. No,
we're not saying it should be. We're saying that it has.
Okay,
historically.
Nationalism also uses community, religion and nationalism and other cults. They take advantage of real desires and needs that we have. We have
I know,
we
but-
have desire for community. We have a desire for awe. We have a desire for inspiration. We have a desire for meditation. We have a desire for sense of belonging. We have a desire
yes,
for
yes,
being part of
we got
bigger.
it.
We have all of these desires. Nobody's denying that we don't have these needs. What I'm saying is that these memes, they are taking advantage of our desires for their own fucking survival.
That's exactly what
and we
we're
are
saying.
going to get crushed while they grow.
So we're in agreement.
I feel like we're talking past each other.
Okay,
Wait, no,
good.
Go ahead.
I agree with you that nationalism and religion has done these things where they've robbed humanity in many different ways.
Right.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
it's not a black and white way. That is a black and white way of looking at an abstract reality that
How?
also involves other realities that should be be taken into account in the conversation.
Mhm.
When most Muslims that you meet, and it's not just them about being human, it's not just them about having a sense of community, they legit, when they read the Quran, they feel that connection, right?
Most Muslims don't read the
legit.
Quran.
Mhm.
What's that?
Most
Muslims
Muslims
don't, but some people. Okay,
No,
some
when they
Muslims,
recite it, even if they don't
Right.
understand it, they feel
No,
it. They feel it.
well, most Muslims actually prove my point because most Muslims are more influenced by things other than Islam itself.
No,
Oh.
that goes for all of them.
We lost Farhan. Yeah,
Oh, we
I get
lost.
to speak more.
We'll come
now.
back.
Well,
come back.
I'm gonna take advantage of this opportunity to say that. What was I gonna say? I had so much to say. Oh yeah, Muslims. When you say like he keeps saying he keeps saying most Muslims, right? Most Muslims are we?
No,
okay,
Armin, he's
no,
not.
no,
I
no.
think you got to try.
We're talking
to
about
understand.
Islam, not Muslims.
I don't think you're listening to him properly.
I
He's
am.
Not disagreeing with me.
You guys,
Armin,
you guys keep
he's
saying-
not. No. I'm telling you. Hold on. Let him come back. Anyway, go ahead. Finish what you're saying.
No, okay. Here's
Go
the
ahead.
thing. When I said this is not black and white thing, first of all, we're winning many battles in different communities, but within each individual as well, we're winning these battles, right? Because people say like, oh, most Muslims are living this life, and yeah, but what is responsible for those lives? Like most Muslims are not influenced by Islam. Like Muslims are much more than just Muslims. I keep saying that many times. There's a lot more to a Muslim than just Islam, right? And you can't just when you say Muslim, the fact that you're referring to so many people as Muslims is to make them sound like robots, where Islam is like a code that you just punch in and they just follow those instructions. Whereas their behavior is not influenced by Islam.
I agree. The question that I was trying to ask him, right, and we gotta hear him out.
Where is he?
The question that I was asking him is that yes, what I was saying, the same thing, that religion, nationalism, all these things, they have been able to. All of these things have been able to provide a sense of community.
What was that?
Okay.
Hey, my phone died. Give me a second to reload my phone. It died.
Okay.
It died
No worries.
because you
Take your time.
it wasn't plugged in.
Yeah. It's okay. What was I saying? Well, what is it that has allowed religion and nationalism and all these things, or especially religion, to be able to provide that sense of community, that sense of connection to people that the secular or the scientific revolution, all these other left-brain things haven't?
They cheated.
You can complain about that all you want, that they cheated.
No, they cheated because.
But there's how did they cheat? What is it about
they come
that
up,
allowed them?
They
to
destroy
win?
competition. By eliminating their competition, either by laws or by executions or by tax exemptions or whatever.
That's one aspect, but there's another aspect to it. The other aspect is that another thing that is very, very inherent in human beings that they want, right, is they want a sense of. Yeah, you almost there, Ron? Oh, okay. Another thing that has done it is a sense of community, a sense of belonging, a sense of identity. That okay, you belong to this. This is who you are.
Yeah, we could offer that without religion.
Right, you can. But the thing is that these are not things that, for example, atheists have been doing for a long time. Atheists have not been organizing. They've not been saying you can be part of this community. They've not been. They've been trying to separate themselves from religion by saying that no,
because
we're
it's
not
not the job of the person. The person that tells you that the medicine that somebody's offering you is fake.
Sorry about that.
Hello?
Yeah.
My phone died.
Well,
It's
can
okay.
you charge your phone because this?
Oh, good now. I got it on the charger. My bad.
Almost over. But go ahead.
Ooh. Sorry,
Go ahead.
patrons. This is not.
Hang on. It's on the computer too.
There's a lot of echo. And
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say that the people. Oh my God, there's so much echo. Can you mute us so we could talk while we?
Yeah. Armin, go ahead.
I'm just gonna mute him.
All right, that should solve the problem. My bad.
All right. Did you change too?
No, I didn't. I had to change my location to put my phone on the charger.
Oh, okay. It looks like a different
Sorry
shirt,
about that.
or maybe I'm just imagining things. Okay, so yeah, my question was, right, that okay, so there's all this stuff that historically, right? Okay, so
we don't see you. You're showing.
no, I can see. We can see him.
No, I don't
He's
see
right
him.
there.
I just see him. What I see is more important because that's what our patrons see, and I see only his head. Here.
Is that better? I moved it a little bit away.
Can you bring your camera lower? What the hell?
Oh, there you go.
I don't see anything. It's fine.
Okay, so what I was saying, Farhan, I kind of I see what you're getting at, all right, and I think we have talked about this in a different context here, right? But one thing to appreciate, right, is that religion and all of these things have been around for over 10,000 years. Okay.
Mhm.
And they haven't been spread. They've been spread at a time they didn't have airplanes, they didn't have internet, they didn't have snail mail, they didn't have anything. So there's no way to really, they didn't have the printing press. There's no way to really spread these ideas. The scientific revolution, really, if you want to date it to the last time when it started and it continues on to this day, is around the time of Kepler and Galileo in the 17th century. So it's been about 400 years to that, right? So 10,000 years for religion, 400 years for this. Already, the science has gotten to the point where the entire world runs on it, even though a lot of people don't acknowledge it. But pretty much everything we have now runs on it. So it takes time, and this is a more connected world. It'll probably be faster. But the one thing that I think, and this is what I was telling Armin when you were away, is that the one thing that science, the scientific community, or atheists, for instance, have not been able to provide to people the way that religion has, is a sense of community and to acknowledge the identity aspect. Like, for example, secular humanism, Reason on Faith is talking about it in the patron chat. He's like, secular humanism is something that all of us will adhere to, right? But there's no sense of identity in there. There's no sense of, okay, this is who I am, this is where I belong. It's just a set of ideals. And it might be more honest and it might be more correct, but how functional is it taking into account the reality of human nature?
You know why? Okay, no.
Farhan. I'm asking Farhan. Yeah.
Right. No, I mean, I agree with that. I think that there's always the possibility of an atheist, materialist, skeptic, whatever you want to call it, to find community, to have friends, to identify as human. I think that that's completely possible. I don't think that there's anything wrong with it. But that's I always compared it to the whole John Lennon Imagine song, which I thoroughly love. I mean, I might consider myself a little bit of a hippie in me. So yeah. in the sense, the Imagine song, that there's no nations, there's no religion, there's no hell below us, et cetera, et cetera. In terms of transcending identity, right? This whole, which is a very postmodern notion of transcending identity. Anytime you deconstruct and we look at the identities that we claim for ourselves, that they're obscure and not real in the way that we think that they are. And so identity to a large extent is an illusion. But psychologically, we as human beings socially require certainty and belonging and that sort of thing, right? And so where do we belong and who do we belong with? It's simply finding a sense of community with whoever one might find community with. It doesn't have to be political. It doesn't have to be spiritual. It doesn't have to be. I think it's inevitably spiritual, regardless.
No, but if you're talking about transcending identity,
Right.
don't you move into something else? So, like, I'll give you your example, and I guess this way we can sort of now move on to the Hinduism aspect as well. Is that you probably had that, you started off in the Ahmadi family, you became a mainstream Muslim, and then you didn't want to define yourself by these identities that were sort of given to you. You wanted to arrive at your own. I mean, I hope I'm not speaking for you, but you moved on. But now you're at a point where it seems like you want to transcend identity. I mean, I know you're involved in meditation, but at the same time, you describe yourself as a Hindu, you describe yourself as a mystic, you describe yourself as a Gnostic, as an agnostic theist, and all these other things. And aren't these just other identities? Can you ever fully shed your sense of? I mean, isn't it just like a human need? I mean, Armin and I were ex-Muslims or atheists or whatever. There's always something there, right?
For conventional purposes, for practical purposes, yeah, I identify not just as all of those things. I'm a male. I'm an American. I'm so I'm a liberal. I'm on the left. So these are all categories that we relate to and subscribe to. But I think that the idea is that if you're able to see beyond the identity, you see the oneness and the unity of everything that human beings and the human condition involves. You no longer see black and white people or Muslims or Christians and all that kind of stuff. And I think that is a state of consciousness or awareness that we're all trying to get to. That's what mysticism is trying to get to. That's what Hinduism teaches. That's what Jalaluddin Rumi was getting at. That it's ultimately none of these identities. But for practical and conventional purposes, yeah, we have to categorize. We have to identify. We have to say that this is a particular set of ideas that comes from this source. So for conventional practical purposes, of course. But that doesn't mean that we're so identified with these things that basically it's my tribe, it's my identity, and forget everybody else. That there isn't.
But can't you achieve that without necessarily calling yourself a Hindu, for instance? So why do you call yourself a Hindu?
You're moving
like
to that, but
that why I call myself, the same reason why I would call myself an American, right? Or some of these other identities. There's a value for the knowledge and perspective that's been developed in a particular region by a particular people and by a particular culture, in spite of the profanities. Listen, we can talk about the massacre of Native Americans. We can talk about slavery. We can talk about segregation, Vietnam War, nuking Japan, on and on and on. We can talk about Donald Trump. How can liberals be proud to be American, right? Should we be proud to be American, or should we only be globalists? But the reality of the situation is that the Constitution, regardless of its history, provides us with liberties and freedoms that we appreciate and enjoy, and they come from a tradition. And I'm, like I said, I'm far more postmodern than I am a traditionalist. I would identify more as a postmodernist than I do a traditionalist. But I value tradition because it's where we've come from. It's how we've developed. The knowledge and perspective that we have today has been developed over thousands of years of refining, of individuals, of visionaries, of philosophers, of thinkers, movers and shakers, who have been changing the conversation. And it's simply that's how I simply see it. And whether that was Muhammad in 7th century Arabia, whether it was Voltaire or John Stuart Mill or John Locke or whoever, humanity requires individuals to rise up and speak their mind, and to speak logically and scientifically as much as possible, hopefully.
Yeah, but those two contradict each other, to value tradition and to look at things scientifically, because there's time doesn't make all things good. If in fact if you look at it from these two things are at odds with each other, right? When there's a reason why something's, as time passes, some things become valuable, but only because they went through a trial and error, and also they tested what works and what doesn't work in a very empirical way. That's not what I call tradition. That's called science. What's called tradition is the troubling part, is when people hold on to things because they're old, because they have been around for a long time. And that's a very dangerous that's actually in contradiction with science, because it does trial and error, but it also keeps errors because they're old. Like it doesn't.
Right.
It's actually moves. It's something that hinders progress. I think when you hold on to tradition. But another thing I wanted to say is because Ali kind of is switching to Hinduism, and after this I want to focus on Hinduism because I want to know why you need to call yourself a Hindu.
Sure.
But one reason why Ali non-religious communities haven't effectively offered those things is because of the monopoly that religion has over those things. So a lot of people are like, oh, we need religion because look, the non-religious community doesn't offer these things as much. Yeah, because religion has such a tight grip over these things. If you move, in places where religion doesn't exist anymore, you don't see people jumping off rooftop from depressions. In fact, some of them are the most happiest places on earth. If you remove these, the market will offer services, because if there's a need, people will offer services that meets those needs. This claim that we need religion because look, without religion we don't see anyone offering any of these. I
don't think anybody's saying. We're not saying we need religion. We're not saying we need religion.
I'm not saying that, but we're
talking about historically.
No,
historically,
Ali, you're saying that you and Reason on Faith, I think, I don't know, I didn't read exactly what it said in the live chat, but you were saying that, oh, we can't build identity or community or something.
No, I didn't say that. No. Did not say that. I did not say that. I didn't say you can't build identity and community. I said historically, the reason that religion, talking about religion has always had a monopoly over it. One of the big reasons that religions has had monopolies over it, it's not just because the violence and the apostasy and the killing and everything. One of the reasons that so many people adhere to it to this day and haven't let it go is because historically it has provided some of the basic things that human nature just craves, and that's a sense of identity and social community. But I'm not saying that you can't build it without it. I'm just saying that historically that has happened, and that's
what I say is that we can do, even not only we can offer these things without religion.
I agree with you.
No, wait. Yeah. But the second part is that I actually think without religion we would do a much better job at addressing these things.
With you. I agree. That was my point when I was saying that scientific revolution is only 400 years old. But as it goes on, right? We've got a 10,000-year history of religion to contend with, but historically, we're just saying that you can't deny that historically religion has.
But let me add something. So I do think that regardless of who we are, whether we're individual or communal, I think that we need some type of coherent framework from which we operate. There needs to be some type of philosophical, practical, methodological framework from which we as individuals and as humans operate. And this could involve a number of social contracts and social dynamics, but ultimately there needs to be social cohesion at various levels, from the family to community to broader subcultures that we have. We are social animals and require these things. But not only has religion played a role historically, but there is the continuation of the human yearning for existential meaning and understanding who we are, whether there's a purpose for life or not. And, the existential questions that all humans can naturally come to, particularly when faced with death and illness and so on and so forth. So there's certain elements that will not go away, that cannot go away, given the human condition.
Right.
And we have to figure out a way to refine what traditional religion has provided us for thousands of years. The other thing that I do want to mention is that we have and we are, and that's great. I agree with you, but we're far from where we want to be collectively when it comes to spirituality and meaning and existential stuff.
And we will move faster towards or without religion. Go on, sorry.
But Farhan, go ahead.
Right. The other thing is an ability to look at the past, including all of these traditions, with a sense of appreciation that this is where we've come from, right? Listen, I know people of many different races and cultural backgrounds and countries and who are absolutely proud to be Mexican or proud to be from wherever that, wherever their culture might be. And I don't see that as them necessarily being tribal. right? I just see them having a sense of identity, of where they and their ancestors have come from, and the knowledge that's been developed, and all the struggles that human beings have gone through in the past. You know what I mean?
I'm in huge favor of looking at the past, because we don't get, looking at the past is the only way we can look at our minds in a social way. I mean, we don't have labs built with humans in it where we could do tests on them and put them on different systems and see what happens. History is the best, is the closest thing we have to a lab where we test on humans. That's what history is. Of course, we need to look at, I'm in favor of looking at Islam and seeing why Islam became popular, and what the reason why Islam became popular, the reason why Christianity became popular, the reason why Buddhism became popular, the reason why Hinduism became popular. It teaches us a lot about our minds. It teaches us a lot about what we want and what we need. But I'm saying we could look, but I value looking at all these traditions and history and learning from it. I just think that all of that can be done without pushing for any of the claims that they make, and to give any credit or legitimacy to any of the supernatural claims that they're offering to. We could look at Islam and learn about what the fuck is this religion, why it grew so much, like, how did it grow so much, how it must teach us something about us as humans. And it must be a lot of lessons to be learned from it in that. Right. I see that. But we can do that while telling people that, yeah, believing in Allah and Muhammad as his prophet is fucking bullshit. We could do those things at the same time.
But I challenge the truth claims that, and I think that anyone who makes truth claims, atheist or religious, that they should be challenged, and that their truth claims are should not. So I'm with you on that. There's no disagreement there. It also does not take away the possibility that there is intelligence, divinity, and spirit at the heart of reality. That possibility is always there.
Divinity in the heart of reality. What does that mean?
Meaning that what's holding all of reality together, that's what's bringing about our evolution, that there's some type of intelligence to it. There could be.
Well, I mean,
I don't think dismissing that possibility in rejecting it totally is necessarily productive.
Well, I mean, the Big Bang could be a giant turtle's fart for all we know. It could be. Like, there's so many things we would
have to look at. Right. We would have to see where the evidence leads us.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't lead to intelligence or a giant turtle's fart.
But if you're saying that divinity is part of our reality, right? Then there's no evidence that has led to that yet. So so I know that you describe yourself as agnostic, as we do, right? So let's get to but you also describe yourself as an agnostic theist part. So I just want to kind of get to so what is it that when you left mainstream Sunni Islam for whatever reason? First of all, what were those reasons that made you leave? And the second thing is, did you explore Christianity? Did you explore any other faiths before settling on Hinduism, or did you just? How did you arrive at that?
Sure. Well, I mean, a couple of different things. So when I left Islam, and I didn't embrace any religion or tradition or anything. I was pretty much an agnostic theist. I believed in pluralism and universalism, that all human beings are experiencing meaning and spirit and express themselves accordingly. That's still my perspective to this day. This is a universal phenomenon that is inclusive of atheists, agnostics. It's erroneous of what you believe or profess about reality, that you're experiencing something that's meaningful. Now, so that was when I first left Islam, right? And so then I had started getting into meditation and mindfulness and yoga. I went and did a retreat in Peru on ayahuasca, had the experience of non-duality, of being one with all that is.
Is your hand covering the mic, do you think?
Oh, my bad. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
It probably was. Go ahead. So I started exploring meditation, mindfulness, yoga, and specifically non-duality after having gone to Peru and experiencing ayahuasca and psilocybin, the mushroom. And so the
sounds a lot like Sam Harris's sort of
did you just say mushroom?
history. Yeah. Sam Harris with hallucinogens, right? But go on.
Right. So those experiences on the plant medicines definitely opened me up to a description that Hinduism described, if you will. Particularly the philosophy of Advaita Vedanta, which describes reality as being non-dual, a monist way of looking at reality. And that is feeling one with, or experiencing oneness with the universe, and all that is a sort of thing. An experience that can't be described with words, to be honest with you. And so it was more than anything, it was probably that experience, but it was also the application of meditation, mindfulness, yoga, and that sort of thing. And then I had started studying Buddhism and Hinduism from a traditional perspective, and I started to really appreciate the perspectives of these great yogis and mystics. Not to exclude, what the Chinese traditions, Taoism is a perfect articulation of the non-dual experience as well. There's a lot of it in shamanism and other cultures. The Greeks did a good job they did a decent job. Plato's subjective idealism focuses on the mind rather than consciousness, but that's a different philosophical conundrum. But the idea is that this is
mindful of your hand. I think you keep getting closer.
Okay, yeah. So right now it's not only so. This is a perennial experience across traditions. This experience of oneness, being one with God. So when Jesus says the Father and I are one, from the perennial perspective, that makes complete sense. From somebody who's experienced it on psilocybin mushrooms, that makes complete sense, because it's a subjective experience. The problem from the empirical standpoint, which is what the materialists come from, is a denial of subjectivity. It is, and it's very much traditionally, go back to the Greeks, Aristotle with objective materialism or realism versus subjective idealism. This is the real conversation that needs to take place between people who are quote unquote spiritual and people who are quote unquote materialists. Not whether there is a God out there who is judging you from the outside and sending prophets and books. The real subject is subjective. The real topic should be subjective idealism versus objective materialism, just like the Greeks argued, just like the Hindus argued, just like all of these perennial mystics
can't you
argued.
have both of those conversations? Do they preclude each other?
No, yeah, they do. One of them sounds bullshit to me. One of them, at least. No.
I'm talking about the conversation about whether there's a God or not, whether there's something there, versus this other debate that you're talking about.
Subjective idealism, right.
So why can't you have both?
Deals with subjectivity itself. It deals with your subjective experience of consciousness.
Why would you think our subjective minds has anything to do with the nature of the freaking universe? Like, why do you think?
Because it is absurd and irrational to deny your own subjectivity. It is absolutely absurd to deny your own subjectivity.
No, I don't deny myself. I don't deny it. I just don't think I don't think how it's connected to the rest of the freaking universe. Like, I don't understand. My mind. I understand. Yeah, everything is interconnected, but it doesn't change the nature of the whole universe just because the way I perceive it.
It's not about perception. It's about your existence. It is about subjectivity itself. It's about consciousness.
Yeah, my consciousness is just neurons, chemical reaction.
Absolutely struggling with and have since time immemorial.
Yeah,
so this doesn't have to do with God outside of you. It has to do with your existence, your subjectivity.
Yeah, my existence, but my existence ends outside the connectum that is my brain. Okay,
like you can't make that truth claim, though. You can't.
I just did.
But how do you make that truth claim? What is your evidence that that's true?
No, but okay, because we know. But do you think that? Wait, what do you think about what our mind is? Do you think it's anything other than our neurons firing like chemical reactions and stuff like that? Do you think it's anything beyond that?
But so I'm agnostic. I can't make a truth claim either way. I'm agnostic about that. But you can't make a truth claim either.
Well, I mean, I'm applying Occam's razor. It just everything like to me, it seems like it's the same. Like, can you make a claim that my laptop? Somehow the processing that my laptop does is anything outside of the laptop itself? Like, do you think?
Well, you've got Wi-Fi signals and all that stuff.
Like, do you think like the stuff that I have stored in my computer is somehow, if I destroy my computer, it will still exist somewhere outside of my computer?
The iCloud, yeah, it will.
No, on my hard drive. Jesus, Ali.
Even then, I mean, if you back it up theoretically, I'm not. By the way, I'm more on Armin's side hold on. I'm more on Armin's side than the other thing. But the thing, what you're saying about the truth claim, yes, you know, like with your laptop, with a lot of other things, yeah, there are places where they can, you know, I am not. I am agnostic about this stuff too, right? But overall, I kind of agree with
agnostic. I mean, okay,
Armin.
so
I don't agnostic as in we can't make a truth claim.
Okay, we can't make a
I
truth
do
claim about
believe-
anything other than the fact that we
right.
exist. Okay, so that's a useless discussion because nothing is for certain 100%.
I'm just saying the laptop is a bad example.
So the
Okay,
only
fine.
thing that we're saying is that, yeah, no, you could throw the laptop in there.
No.
We don't understand the nature of physics and consciousness.
Yeah, but we don't. Okay,
Right.
okay. Just because nothing is 100% doesn't mean that we can't be close to it. All right, we don't expect to be 100% certain about anything. Okay,
Right.
But we
so as much as you're exploring the objective world and measuring it,
what?
there's a possibility of
Well,
exploring possibility of exploring subjectivity and finding something there as well.
But the way you're exploring it to me sounds like wishful thinking, rather than actual exploration.
Well,
because
Armin,
hold on. Because
I want to ask. I want to find out. Hold on.
Mm-hmm.
We know what we think. I just want to know, Farhan, how do you test it? How do you explore subjectivity that's
Right, so this
outside
isn't-
of your mind?
Right. So there, in terms of you're attempting to look at subjectivity through an objective lens, right? The only thing you're going to be able to measure is physical mechanisms. You're going to be able to measure what's going on in the brain. But this is what the hard problem of consciousness says, that where is a thought? Where is a memory? We don't know the relationships between physics and consciousness at all. We don't understand
what makes
why
stuff
the
up?
brain operates.
So make stuff up.
No, but we do know. We do
nobody
know
needs
that
to
it
make
exists
a-
within the natural. We do know that whatever it is, it exists within us, right? Like we don't know, like, you know, the whole Deepak Chopra thing of the collective consciousness and everything. That stuff is, so
But
even
that
even
is
the
it's
experiential,
horseshit.
though. That is no, it's not. It's experiential. The experience of oneness throughout time, in a perennial sense, people have experienced being one with all that is, and it's not something that words can describe.
Yeah,
So, I mean, making a truth claim.
I've
Deepak Chopra made a truth claim about the collective unconscious. Everybody has a right to criticize and be skeptical. You know what I mean? That's fine. But the only thing that I'm saying is that it doesn't make sense to dismiss subjectivity. The way that I explain it is this: the objective realist says that subjectivity and consciousness is an illusion, meaning and that sort of thing. It's all an illusion. All your feelings, they don't matter. This is a random mistake that is useless and pointless, and
that's
it's a
a
joke.
straw man. That's a straw man. That's a straw man.
No, okay, you're going to say conventionally there's meaning, but ultimately there's no meaning from this perspective.
There's
right?
a lot of meaning, but it doesn't mean anything.
Ultimately, there's not.
What are you talking about? No, okay. There's obviously what I feel is there's something scientific behind it. Like these are like our imaginations, our feelings. They're very interesting and it could be studied in a scientific way. What we're not saying, and they're not random. There's a lot of natural laws behind every fucking atom that is moving in my brain, but it's not random at all. But what we're claiming is that there's no connection behind our feelings and the nature of the freaking universe. Like this is such a small part of the universe.
But you don't know that though.
Yeah, okay, but you don't know again,
that there is.
You don't know there
right,
is.
I'm an agnostic, but I value subjectivity enough to give it to pay close enough attention to it to say that there's something that really could
so
be.
If I okay, so if I feel,
what drove you to this? What made you think that there is a connection?
So wait, no. If I have a dream that if I have a dream that the universe starts, no.
So
if I have
dimethyltryptamine and psilocybin mushrooms gives you an experience that is utterly persuasive. If you come out of an experience,
hold on, Armin.
Right, that it is utterly persuasive. I came out of it.
You're asking. Hold on. Armin, you're going out. You're speaking. Let Farhan speak just for.
But you go on for so long, and
no. Listen to the podcast over afterwards.
Okay.
Right.
Go ahead.
Anything that human beings, the argument from neuroscience that is brain chemistry, that is hallucination. Any phenomenology that you experience involves the brain and its chemistry. Anything that you call real Anything that you call objective involve the brain chemistry that you have in its interpretation of the stimuli that it comes in contact with, and that includes anything that one might experience on a plant medicine that aids in brain chemistry that gives an individual certain perceptions. So why do I value subjectivity to begin with? Is because that I'm experiencing a profound phenomenological world, and I'm having a subjective experience. And it's not merely, I can't say, make the truth claim that it's merely brain mechanisms. I don't know that.
Okay.
Psychedelics opened you up, and it's very persuasive in terms of subjective experience, extremely persuasive. So much so that I came out of it, and I consider myself in terms of truth claims, I consider myself absolutely skeptical. I came out of my subjective experience thinking that if I were to, that not only is that what I just experienced always going on, any skepticism that I try to apply to it seems foolish.
So have you read? So you listen to Sam Harris, and you've read his. So with Sam Harris, like in his book "Waking Up: The Guide to Spirituality Without Religion," he had a very similar sort of experience that you did. I mean, a similar trajectory. Let's say he went on when he was younger. He went on meditation retreats. He experimented with a lot of hallucinogens. Right. So I mean, you probably read about that. And he actually praises that. He said everybody should do it because it expands the mind. It tells you the potential of your mind is. But he came to a radically different conclusion than what you're saying.
For him, articulate his conclusion. What do you think? How is his conclusion?
Well, I mean, for him, I can't remember exactly, so I'm going to be paraphrasing him, obviously, or I hope I'm representing him okay. But he essentially acknowledged the same thing, that it is when you go through it, it's very persuasive. He completely understands how people can have transcendental experiences and they can develop certain beliefs. He's even sort of at one point, I think he's even mentioned that he's agnostic about things like life after death. He's not as hardcore, like it doesn't exist like everybody else. But
then he changed.
Right, Abi, but how is that radically different than what I'm saying, though?
No, because he came to his senses and
because Armin. Because he came to the conclusion, right, that his experience, what he learned from it, was that he still thinks that it is all a product of our human mind. It's like near-death experience.
No, he says he's agnostic about that. He says he's agnostic about that. He does not say that it's merely...
No, but he's not... Okay, go on. What's your reading of it?
Yeah, but my reading of it is that he's agnostic to what it all is. And that... Yeah, I mean that's what I gather from it, is that he's agnostic about it all. I don't think that he's ever made the truth claim that it's merely a brain mechanism. He's open to the possibility that there might be something to it. What his problem
not outside human physiology.
Right.
Like not outside. He's not making the claim that there are things outside, or there's a connection with the wider universe, or there's a collective consciousness. He's not saying anything that's external to what is a product of our brain.
Right, he does not make those truth claims. I try not to make those truth claims either. I'm very open to those possibilities. In matter of fact, I incline towards those possibilities.
It's a very okay. Let's be. There's a correct way to be skeptical, and there's a very we can't be so skeptical that we accept everything, open to everything. Okay,
we can't be skeptical about skepticism.
We can't be. We can't just open the when people say. I think a lot of people don't understand the right way to be skeptical. Being skeptical doesn't mean you open the door to fucking everything. Right. Being skeptical means that you open the door to things that have evidence for it, right? And just because you don't throw everything completely out, usually you put them close to the idea of the universe coming out of the fart of a giant turtle, right? Like you can't throw that out either, can you? Can you? You can't. But everything else that you can't completely throw out will just go in the corner of Tooth Fairies and Santa Claus and Peter Pan.
But there's no need to make any truth claim at all. The question is to explore. The issue is to explore the possibilities.
Yeah, there are right ways. But if you're exploring, instead of just randomly exploring through a sea of everything that is possible, maybe you could have a direction in your exploring, and that direction is called science. Okay, because if you just go by your feelings, or like it just feels this way, it just feels that way, you're just going to come to conclusions that just feels good, and you just feel warm and fuzzy about believing in them. Okay,
that is a denial and a rejection of subjectivity. You're exclusively only accepting one epistemology towards truth.
Yeah, the right one.
And philosophically, that doesn't work. Science is not the only epistemic path to knowledge.
It's the best one.
Subjectivity matters. In matter of fact, subjectivity is the ground of all scientific exploration.
Okay, so subjectivity. You keep putting words in my mouth. Everything, obviously, we have experience is subjective. It has to go through the filter of our perception. So how could it not be subjective, right? So,
exactly.
So that's what science does is try to understand the way we perceive things and try to adjust for our errors as humans, adjust for our biases. If you don't introduce that filter to your perception and just go by everything you experience and feel, then you're opening the door to a random, sea of nonsense.
I agree with that. So and Sam Harris agrees with this too. That's why
I don't know why we're bringing Sam Harris to this all.
Because we just brought up Sam Harris because somebody said that Sam Harris's conclusion was radically different. I completely disagree with that. I think that
but let's focus on what you're saying though.
The reason I brought him in is just because his trajectory, when you talked about your sort of experimentation with hallucinogens and how you came to.
All right, but I asked a question. We're getting off tangent. See, Ali, you're doing to me what you tell me I'm doing to you. Okay. So no, I'm just saying that nobody's denying us being subjective because we can't. How could we perceive the world without going through the human filter? Because
right, and so it's as simple as, does your subjectivity matter? That's all that we're exploring. We're not making any truth claims.
What is it? I don't even understand what it means. It's there. It's there. It exists. Okay.
Right.
It exists, and we have to see its weaknesses. And that's what science.
I agree with you. The science should science needs to be there. We have to have science.
There's nothing else we have.
We have subjectivity. We have logic. We have reason.
I mean, science. You just said yourself. Science is based uses our subjective experiences. But we know our subjective experiences is flawed. And that's why we need science to adjust for those flaws.
I agree. Okay. Completely agree.
So we're going. I think here's what it is. Like we had this conversation, I think a long time ago, about philosophy versus science, right? And I've always thought that the only way to arrive at anything that is an objective truth that everybody can look at it and say, okay, this is it, is science. I think that's the only way. I don't think there's any other way. Now, with philosophy, for instance, it helps you ask questions. So that's a very important part of science. So science grew out of philosophy. The one part of philosophy that was really important that science incorporated, now part of the scientific method, is hypothesis generation. Right? That's the asking of questions. There are other things, and so that part of it is part of the scientific method. So the idea of inquiry, the idea of collecting evidence, arriving at a conclusion, correcting for all your biases, falsifiability, all of that, that's all part of the scientific method. And that really is the only way, any kind of objective truth we know today, that is the way that we've arrived at it. Now, with subjectivity, with philosophical methods, what you can do is you can ask questions. Questions, for example, ethics. You can talk about ethics. You're not going to arrive at any objective conclusions, right? But it'll help you ask questions, and it'll help you. Yes, it is a path to knowledge. It is a way that you can gain certain path to knowledge.
Inductive reasoning.
Right. But it's not going to help you arrive at any sort of objective, conclusive truths that everybody can see, that are demonstrable, that are testable, and
Mike in the live chat is asking, if we ever create conscious AI, would it be spiritual and subjective?
Of course.
Oh,
because from the perspective of subjective idealism, all physics and metaphysics co-arise. If it's an articulate expression of non-duality, physics and metaphysics co-arise. So if consciousness is the ground of all reality, then anything that arises within it,
Oh my
including
God.
AI.
But can you explain what
That makes-
metaphysics like?
No.
What do you
Can
mean
you
by
explain
metaphysics?
what the ground of reality is? Consciousness. Consciousness comes
Uh,
after reality. It's not.
no,
It's the other way around.
No, it's possible that it's the other way around.
No,
It's
not.
possible that consciousness is the foundational reality, and that physics emerges out of consciousness.
Oh
I
my
don't take
God.
that.
But Farhan,
perspective,
everything, a lot of things are possible.
though. Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
there are many things that are.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that are possible.
Right.
But we're talking about in order to have a conversation about this is one of the reasons I'm asking you what you mean by metaphysics too.
Sure.
I know this feels kind of weird because this is I'm enjoying this a lot. I know that there's two
We need
of
to get
us
to
in this
Hinduism,
one,
by the
but-
way.
Huh?
We need to
Definitely.
get to Hinduism.
Well, we might have to talk about that another time. since we
No.
have like 15 minutes left.
That was in the title. It's in the title. You have
Okay,
to talk
then
about
let's just.
molecules.
That's like, but that's everything. So
Right. Everything is Atom's molecule.
that's what
No,
I find it.
there's- Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. I just find it tough. I mean, I know what metaphysics is. I know what people mean when they say it. I just find it really challenging to have like conversations when we're
It's because you're
invoking it a lot
trying
of
to
times.
use science to understand something that you can only subjectively experience. And you're experiencing it subjectively and are having a hard problem explaining it objectively.
We're not. We're actually explaining
No,
all those.
I think
all
so.
those. All of
No,
those
I
things
think
that
I
you
think you can.
Yeah, all
Yeah,
of the,
because
all of
sorry.
those things that you mentioned, we're explaining. We're doing actually a surprisingly good job at it, and we're getting better at it by every decade.
You're able to. We are able to explain mechanisms that bring about laughter. We're able to explain that these are neurotransmitters that are released in a biological organism when something like bonding is experienced.
Yeah.
Explaining a mechanism does not solve the hard problem of consciousness. Demonstrating a mechanism does not somehow bring about and explain meaning and purpose.
Sounds
No,
like
no, but
we don't know.
nothing else does either.
You know,
So
this
here's
this very much sounds like the argument, "I don't know, therefore God."
No, but I didn't say I don't know, therefore God.
I didn't say
said
you
I'm
did.
saying
I didn't
that
say
I don't
it.
know.
Sounds like it. Yeah.
Right,
Therefore,
right. So I'm
Therefore
leaning towards-
metaphysics.
as an agnostic theist, I'm saying I don't know.
therefore metaphysics.
There's a good chance that there's intelligence there. I wonder if there is.
Yeah,
Wh-
that's okay. That part.
But
of it,
you
that-
could.
I'm
But
okay
when
with.
you say, when you shoved intelligence, I could shove, I don't know, woo. I could shove like
But
fairy
these are
dust. I'm gonna
used
shove
to
fairy
project
dust.
your
Fairy
own
dust.
subjective spiritual experience.
Okay, you shove
when it's the
intelligence.
most
I'm shoving
obvious
fairy
thing.
dust.
Wait, hang on. We're talking about reason and science. Reason and science cannot even occur without subjectivity. This is what materialists and physicalists do.
But I'm
They
just
are
saying,
in
you say you
denial
don't
of their
know,
subjective
therefore
experience.
maybe intelligence.
I don't think that's true. I think everything that you have experienced, okay, apart from the specifics of when you were doing certain sort of the plant medicines and so on, everything that you've experienced, we as I guess objectivists or whatever it is. I'm not familiar with the lingo. I'm from like a hard
Objective
science.
realist, right.
Yeah, so we've experienced too. We've been through
Of course.
it. Now everything that's subjective, like the laughter and beauty and the sense of transcendence, or when I first had my daughter,
Hinduism.
those kinds of those kinds of things are things that I have experienced as well.
I'm gonna-
But what I say to people is like, I think Armin has a point with the I don't know, therefore God. So like this idea that if I don't have, like, this is something that cannot be explained by hard science, objective realism, or whatever it is, but so that means that there has to be X, right?
Yeah, there's nobody saying there has to be anything.
or that there's a good chance that there's X. I'm just comfortable with saying, okay, I don't know. I'm comfortable with asking questions. I feel like it's better to ask questions that have no answers than to answer to create answers, right? That don't have any objective basis. It's okay to remain in the dark, and
Well, I mean, it's okay,
Okay,
to remain
yeah.
in the dark as so long as one can
you're
appreciate
asking.
subjectivity. Again,
We all appreciate subjectivity.
Right, exactly.
We're talking about what conclusion you're getting to from
Right.
that.
So yeah, what conclusion I'm getting to is that the subjectivity itself, without any psychedelic plant medicine, is a phenomenal, profound existence. It is absolutely outstanding and outrageously crazy to be human and to be able to have this conversation in a
Hinduism.
universe that is thoroughly complex.
Okay.
And
So
we are
let's move on.
agnostic.
Yeah, go ahead.
So that's all that my perspective is. I think that I'm skeptical of the materialist truth claim. I have reasons to believe that subjectivity and what I experience subjectively matters. I don't know though.
Oh, but I don't think that's preclusive. Look, I think that matters too. I think that I have reason to believe that it actually matters. I just don't know how it matters or whether it means it. I don't want to ascribe anything else to it apart from the fact that I think it matters. That's it.
Sure.
And I think that we all agree with that. Anyway, so let's move on to
Hinduism.
Armin, you asked the question since you've been sitting there like...
Why the fuck would you call yourself a Hindu?
Oh God, what a start. Armin, can you please?
Right.
Just this whole thing.
Why would I call myself an American when Donald Trump is our president? When we've had slavery and segregation and bomb and nuke Japan, why would I stand and put my hand on my chest and salute the flag?
Yeah, why would you do that?
Why would I do that? Well, right.
You shouldn't.
It's because I see first of all, I appreciate the evolution that the country's been through. We are not the same country that we were 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Generationally, millennials are different than baby boomers. We're beginning to look at things quite differently. I'm on the left. I'm a liberal. I'm a progressive. I appreciate the traditions that have brought America its liberties and values. I appreciate the John Locke's of the world and the Thomas Jeffersons of the world without them needing to be infallible or perfect, without necessarily objecting against their immoralities and their injustices. I'm able to do that. And same thing with the Hindu tradition. For a culture and a civilization, and I can do this with the Greeks, I can do this with the Egyptians, right? For a culture and a tradition to develop a philosophy that articulates the psychedelic and mystical experience as profoundly as it does, I am absolutely inspired by it. I love the archetype. It's a personal preference, right? So I'm not saying that anybody else needs to adopt this. I'm not saying that anybody else needs to believe this or do this. I'm saying that the framework and its descriptions of the non-dual experience, its application of methodologies such as meditation and yoga work for me. The connection that I have with the broader Indian community, with the hippie and the New Age community, is a great and beautiful friendship, and I enjoy it. I'm fully able to express myself through this framework, and I'm not imposing it on anybody. I'm not saying that anybody should think the way that I think, perceive the way that I perceive, and believe what I believe.
So okay,
so why call it Hindu though? I mean, but the Hindu also
because it is. It literally is. Just like the Constitution and the liberties and all of that it comes from. I give credit to the Enlightenment philosophers. I give credit to the United States as an institutional, as a nation. I give credit where credit is due. I give credit to Muhammad.
You know what I do? I give credit to Enlightenment philosophers, but I wouldn't go as far as call myself an Enlightenment philosopher myself, just because I give credit to them, right? And then would you like, if you see value in Egyptian like mythology, you see beauty in it, would you call yourself an Egyptian?
No, I do value,
Okay, so are you an Egyptian?
Stuff like that. No, I'm not. Well, I am literally Hindu in an ethnic, right?
Okay, so you're talking about ethnic. I'm talking about values and ideas.
Right.
Right? I'm talking about ideology.
Just because I like some Egyptian ideas doesn't mean that I've now adopted a lifestyle that goes according to the Egyptian Book of the Dead. I have happened to adopt a lifestyle.
Would you find it crazy if somebody?
Hold on.
No. He made his point. He made his point.
No, I didn't hear the end of it. You have.
I have adopted a lifestyle of yoga and meditation and vegetarianism and all of these types of things, and I'm influenced by what the Hindu civilization has produced. It is no different to me. It is no different if The Rock is able to come out in his Samoan attire, if shamans are able to value their traditions, if African Americans can look back at their history and value where they've come from and their beliefs and their heritage and their philosophies and their saints and sages, then why can't I? There's nothing wrong with it. There's no supremacy here. Right? I'm not saying that the Hindus are better than the Persians or the Greeks or the Egyptians. It's simply an appreciation of history and tradition and ancestry.
I really don't understand when people, when you say ask a question why you're doing something and people answer why can't I do it? when people asking for the logic behind something, they're not suggesting that you technically can't do it, right?
Right.
Like nobody. I didn't like when I say, for example, why would you convert to Islam? And somebody says, why can't I convert to Islam? I didn't say you can't convert to Islam. I'm asking the logic. Like nobody's suggesting that you can't. Right.
So the logic that I gave behind it is that Hinduism has done the best and most profound job of describing the non-dual experience. Meditation and yoga as a lifestyle and as a methodology work for me. It's as simple as that.
Mm-hmm.
And I honor where it's come from. There's nothing wrong with honoring where it comes from. I don't exclusively honor the Hindu tradition. I honor all traditions. But I also see that there have been a lot of
all traditions.
All traditions. All tradition. This is the human endeavor. We've all collectively evolved in different ways, in different contexts, and so I appreciate where we've come from and how we're continuing to refine and evolve.
What about the tradition of burning your wife alive? What about the Hindu tradition of burning your wife alive along with the husband when he dies? What about the tradition of the caste system? That's a tradition.
Exactly. Right. I look at it no different than the Egyptians doing mummification.
But you value it?
The Aztecs doing human sacrifices, or the Christians believing in a human sacrifice.
Yeah, it's all fucked up.
These types of ideas and beliefs are expected of ancient and archaic civilizations. I don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. But the bathwater does need to be thrown out, for sure.
No, you should kill the baby. But no, why would you? No, seriously. If the baby involves burning your wife or the caste system, fucking kill that baby. Don't.
But time out. Who's trying to do that today, though?
You say you value it. You keep switching. You keep switching between like this is part of reality. I acknowledge that it exists, and then also, but you kind of sneak in value. No, if I don't value something,
right,
it doesn't mean that I'm denying that it was part of reality. I'm not denying that it didn't happen.
It's contribution to human progress.
You said you value all traditions.
Right.
Do you value the caste system?
No, that doesn't imply. That's like saying just because I appreciate where we come from as a country, the United States of America, then now I somehow value slavery and segregation. That's just
so you don't value all traditions. You don't value the tradition of slavery. You don't value the tradition of slavery.
Right. No, I'm talking. Okay, so you're getting into individual traditions rather than an entire social.
Armin, let him speak.
Okay.
That involves a lot of nuances, a lot of practices, a lot of ideas, right? You can't just say American in like a broad brush sense. There are things that humanity has been refining and letting go little by little. Racism is one of them. We're not there yet. Misogyny is another one. We're not there yet. Nationalism is another one. I'm all for globalism. We're not there yet. We are refining and evolving, and we've got a long way to go. But that refining includes giving up things like human sacrifices. That includes giving up things like sacrificing lambs for whatever reason at the altar. It includes things like
I think Armin's getting to.
But
when you're talking about valuing.
No, Ali. Let me respond to this. The problem is that you're bundling them up. You say you're picking and choosing traditions. Yeah, that's the right way to do it. When you keep giving the American example, I disagree with that as well. If you bundle the whole Americanism experience together and value it all together, you're helping in keeping the shitty parts of it. This is why I don't value Hinduism or Iran as a country or Canada as a country or Israel as a country. You look at everything individually. This is good. This is fucked up. We get rid of this. When the nationalism and religions, when they bundle things up and they want you to respect the whole thing, it makes it more difficult to individually analyze because because they come up as part of the package and as part of the bundle. When you give credibility to that package, you're making those things that we should have gotten rid of years ago last longer. This is why I don't look at America. I look at, Landing in the moon, fantastic. Science,
But wait,
great.
come
No,
on, come on. What
No,
part
wait.
of Hinduism is currently saying that sati and the caste system should be implemented? India banned the caste system 10 years before America banned segregation.
India
There
as
is
a
a movement
country,
amongst
India as a
conservative
country,
Hindu nationalists.
everything great
There's-
about India
there's a
comes from a
movement-
secularism. India is
There's a movement among Hindu
you
nationalists
keep you
that oppose the
you
caste system.
you keep choosing India and Hinduism
Because
interchangeably.
you said you wanted to talk about Hinduism.
No, but
And
I'm just
you're
saying
trying
India
to-
is
you're
not
trying to
Hinduism.
imply-
India is not
You guys-
What you're
Hinduism.
doing
You
is
guys
you're
are both
trying to
speaking
make
at the same
Hinduism
time, and
Yeah.
I can't hear. Hold on,
Okay.
Farhan,
Yeah.
finish what you're saying.
Okay, so what you're trying to do is you're trying to turn Islam into an Abrahamic religion like Christianity and Islam, where where all the doctrines, where the
No.
specific doctrines that you inherit and you have to subscribe to. Hinduism does not work the same way.
Neither
It
does
doesn't.
astrology, and it's still bullshit.
What about astrology?
And that's not. It doesn't have to be exactly like Abrahamic religions. A lot
No,
of
but you're trying to say that somehow sati and casteism is inherent to a theological premise, which isn't true.
It is one of the most ancient parts of Hinduism. Come on, it's part of Hinduism. Even
Wait,
yes, yeah,
wait.
the caste system is part of Hinduism.
Okay,
We agree with that, right? It's part of Hinduism. Okay.
it's a part of it. It's
So
developed in
India has evolved to be first of all, it has still a lot to go. Caste system is still a huge problem in India.
It's a huge problem. Yes.
But we can't deny that India has made a huge progress, and getting rid of it a lot. Still has a long way to go.
Yes.
India as a country has made a lot of progress because of its secularism, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because of it, and Hindu traditions has held it back. You talk about refining.
Wait, how is Hinduism? How is Hindu tradition held secularization back? In the specific context of the caste system in Sati.
Well, in many
Because you have BJP conservatives who are thoroughly against the
you're
caste.
talking about people rather than ideology. The interesting thing about Hinduism is that because it is not one thing, as many people keep reminding us, it's many different things. The influence on society it's felt in many different ways, right? Not like nonsense claims about the universe rarely help. So, like, when it comes to medicine, when it comes to people donating money to things that don't help them, when it comes to people using ways of curing each other that is unscientific, when it comes to a lot of, like, there's hundreds of different superstitious beliefs.
It's like you're conflating Islam with Hinduism. Because, because Islam cannot get rid of chopping the hand off, because Islam cannot get rid of, the permission to marry 4 wives.
I'm not saying that.
Therefore, Hinduism shouldn't be able to give up.
No.
I didn't say that.
Well.
I said
Here's a better analogy, Farhan. Is for instance, this idea of gay rights, same-sex marriage, right? So this is something that there's a lot of European nation states that are actually officially Christian states, like the Netherlands, like even England has a Church of England and all that. So there's a part of they're not actually officially, they're not truly secular. Now the thing is, in those, if you would say, for instance, that Christianity has evolved to allow same-sex marriage or same-sex unions or same-sex rights, then it would be false. What happened is that yes, England, the Netherlands, a lot of these officially Christian states have allowed same-sex unions. They have allowed that. It's the societies and the secular progression of those societies eventually that allowed for gay rights to happen. But that's not something that actually came from the religion that is associated with those nation states. So it's the same kind of thing with India. India is officially secular and pluralistic. So sati and the caste system and some of these really the stuff that's in the Manu Samriti, a lot of these really sort of misogynistic practices, they are part of Hinduism. You can't take them out of it. You can't take them out of Hinduism. And yes, in India it's not practiced, and India may have even made laws against it all, right? And they may even have banned it. But that doesn't mean that Hinduism is. So
Hinduism allows you to reject it. Listen, I also admire the Mayans and the Incans, but would I advocate for their human sacrifices to the sun god? Of course not. The idea is to refine our perspective on truth, continue to evolve, and Hinduism thoroughly allows that, and that's something that should be embraced, and it should be something that that is encouraged.
See, like I don't know, Gemini in
I'm gonna switch my phone. Yeah, go ahead.
in astrology, for example, we can change it. Like Gemini could mean one thing, like if you're a Gemini, but we could evolve for it to mean something else. The thing is that we would do better completely without such nonsense. The claim that I'm making is not an extraordinary claim. The claim is that the more our belief system matches reality, the better we can progress as humanity. That's not a very extraordinary claim, and I think what I know Hinduism is very different from Abrahamic religion, so is astrology. Astrology is not very at all similar to Abrahamic religion, but at the end of the day, people that believe in these things have a very their map of reality is very different from what reality actually is, and it can't be helpful. Let me bring Ellie down here.
I'm here.
What can't be helpful? Believing in astrology?
Believing in nonsense. Believing in claims without evidence. Believing in gods. Believing in reincarnation. Believing in karma. Believing in anything that without having a view of reality that is completely off.
So I think that certain truth claims regarding these things can be and should be challenged. I think that there can be an openness to mysticism, though, towards the possibility that if everything is interconnected, that there might be something more to what's going on. I certainly would not make any truth claims regarding astrology. I'm very open to reincarnation as a possibility.
Oh my God! So that's a problem I have with Hinduism, then.
Right, but consider this, Armin. If there is intelligence, let's use the premise, okay? Let's use P1 as if there is intelligence at the heart of reality, right? Then, and if consciousness continues post-mortem, then what makes more sense? What's more plausible? Does it make more sense that you're going to remember an eternity of being an Iranian? Are you in Australia? I don't know what country.
Canada.
Okay. Of being a Persian, of being a Persian Canadian for the rest of eternity, with the particular hairstyle you have, with the particular chin you have, being that biological organism, that's the memory that you have for the rest of eternity, versus something that we do see in the practical world, which is humanity evolving over time. And could this mean that we have been here evolving and reincarnating over and over again? That is much more plausible than thinking that you have one life and that's all you remember.
Well, you're reinforcing what the problem I have with Hinduism, because this to me, that's not all nonsense. I mean, my problem with this, with the premise to begin with, and the fact is, I think Hinduism encourages views like that, and that's a disease, I think.
No, but in a sense, there is a reincarnation that's happening, right? In the sense that matter is continuously dying, cyclically remanifesting itself. Human beings are evolving from a certain set of genetic makeup to an additional set of genetic makeup.
It's interesting. Hindu apologists always tell me that I'm looking at Hinduism as if it's an Abrahamic religion, but a lot of the arguments that they make for Hinduism sounds a lot like the same apologetics that Muslims and Christians make for them. Because I hear exactly the same arguments for defending Adam and Eve, or the splitting of the moon, or the devil falling from heaven.
Different thing, evolution is happening.
No. We were told in school about Adam and Eve, how Adam and Eve is really about evolution. I mean, I came up with such bullshit myself like that when it comes to Islam.
But Farhan, so what happened is that with evolution in the Quran, there's a statement that says that God made human beings out of the water. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we used to talk about how that's reality, because whether you look at body composition, 60% of women are water, of females, and 70% of the male body is made out of, it's literally H2O. You can look at it as, you know, we all came out of the water, have evolved out of the water as fish, amphibians, and so on. They used to talk about the mirage journey, Muhammad's flight to heaven, that he flew in the form of light. So, you know, E equals MC squared. So it was basically mass converted to energy, and that shows proofs of relativity. Well, see, now you're laughing at that, but it's the same kind of thing. So when you talk about, say, the carbon cycle, right? And you're talking about, like, you know, how people or living things die and they go into the ground, then, you know, they become fertilizer for a while, then that feeds like new plants, and then new life grows and it gives rise to new life and all that. And they're calling that reincarnation. That is a carbon cycle. It's true that life sort of renews itself. It's true that there is a law of conservation of matter and the law of conservation of energy. And, you know, all of that stuff is true. But conflating that with this idea of reincarnation in Hinduism, that's actually very specific. And it's, you know, it sounds a lot. It sounds a lot to me like, you know, saying that the mirage journey of Muhammad to heaven was E equals MC squared.
The question is if there is an afterlife, right? There's near-death experiences. If spirit, there's psychedelic experiences. If these experiences are meaningful and there's intelligence at the heart of the universe, what is the most plausible afterlife possibility?
That's a huge if. You just shoved in.
There's a couple of possibilities. There's only a few possibilities that we have, right? We have the possibility that you're going to remember for the eternity of being a Persian Canadian or a Pakistani American. And that's what you remember for the rest of eternity. There's a possibility of a simulation theory. There's a possibility of a multiverse, and there's a possibility of reincarnation.
Now, the simulation theory is actually more... It's
I don't know why
why
we're talking about this. The giant leap we took was with the premise itself.
I know, but listen, Armin, the reason we're granting the premise is because we're talking about things from Farhan's point of view. Right. So I want to understand things from Farhan's point of view. So even on that premise, you know, anyway, continue what you were saying. Finish what you're saying.
Right. If there's heart, and it is a big if. I agree with Armin there. It is a big if. But if it is true, then and there is post-mortem consciousness, and there's something to near-death experiences and out-of-body experiences and things of this nature, then what is the most plausible scenario? I mean, we're speculating.
Well, but the problem is that the foundational isn't plausible.
When you enter Magic Land, anything you can make up anything now.
No, but
reincarnation makes more sense than the other possibilities.
No, but
everything makes the same amount of sense when you enter that world of
if the foundational if that you establish, right? The foundational if that you establish is actually not plausible, okay, or not very plausible, then anything that's built on top of it is that, like, you know, for instance, again, to go back to the Star Wars and the Harry Potter example Armin was giving. So if Harry Potter is real, right, then it makes it much more plausible that magic wands have a lot more power than lightsabers, right? If Harry Potter is real. But that, again, that foundational if is it's a really, really big if. So yeah, we can have. So what we're doing is now.
I mean, I don't agree. I don't agree on that analogy, but I see.
Of course, I understand that. I mean, I understand what you mean, but I'm just trying to tell you that I am trying to understand.
But you're trying to say that there's no realistic way of looking at an afterlife possibility. You don't even want to attempt.
No, I think.
No, we have attempted, and we realized that it was ridiculous. We have attempted it.
No. I wouldn't think. I think that there are.
No, you're making.
That there's any continuation of consciousness.
Yeah,
how would you even make that claim?
It's very easy.
Okay, so here's
I just did by stating it.
Okay, so here's what I would say. But just this idea that so here's what I would say. There's things that I know. I'm not going to connect these to necessarily an afterlife, but there's things that we know. For instance, one thing that you said yourself, that there's the law of conservation of matter and energy, right? The fact that matter and energy are interconvertible. There's the idea that there is a quantum world. Okay, that all atoms have nuclei. Each proton is made up of 2 up quarks and 1 down quark, and the neutrons are made up of. So all these subatomic particles, they always exist. They can pop in and out of existence. Our body is obviously made up of them. They are able to carry electrons, carry information, you know, across like wide. So we know all of these things together. So yes, if I piece up all of the stuff, I can come up with a possibility that something of our consciousness is something that we think may survive later. But to call it plausible, right? I have these little bits of information. They're all fascinating, and they're great if I want to write a science fiction novel, for instance. You know, it could come together. But if I wouldn't call them plausible, at least not until I have evidence.
Well,
Now,
I'm saying which one is more plausible than the other? A single life that you remember for eternity.
What's more plausible is what we know based on the best knowledge that we have right now.
Absolutely no evidence to believe that after you die, you're going to remember yourself as Ali Rizvi.
Okay. So here's what's plausible. What's plausible to me is that if I get bovine spongiform encephalopathy or mad cow disease. So I don't know why I said that. I'm just used to saying it like that. But so if I get mad cow disease, it's going to turn parts of my brain into sponge. And eventually all of my brain's going to turn to sponge. And when that happens, I'm going to turn into a blithering idiot. Now, if I have a stroke in a certain part of my brain, right, I will lose those memories. I may lose certain body functions. I may not even be able to recognize my own wife or my own mother or, you know, my loved ones. Now, with a little bit of damage to your brain, if it's going to do that much to me, where it's fundamentally going to change the person that I am, right? What happens when the entire brain is dead? The entire brain is dead. Nothing survives. So then none of what makes me is going to survive. So to me, it's a lot more plausible. We're talking about plausible based on what we know. Based on what we know, it's much more plausible that it's done. Now, do I have subatomic particles in my brain that can eventually go out and they can carry information and carry it in perpetuity, and there's quantum entanglement, there's all these other phenomena that happen? Yeah, that's a lot of fun to think about, but is it plausible? Is it as plausible as me losing my entire brain and losing myself, like as in Mad Cat? No, it's not, right?
So, Ali, the thing is, I agree with you, but if we recall what the conversation was if there's intelligence, which one of these possibilities are more plausible? I didn't compare it to the materialistic perspective.
Even if there is intelligence, even if there is an intelligence, supposing there's an...
No, we shouldn't entertain that. That's not an thing to entertain. It's ridiculous.
No, Armin, the idea that there isn't...
Why is it ridiculous to entertain it, though?
We shouldn't move past that unless we have established that that's actually likely.
No, Armin, I disagree with you. I don't think that part of it's ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous to think that intelligence wrote books and blesses marriages and does all that stuff. That part is ridiculous. But to think that, okay, maybe like, you know, there's all this stuff that's happening in the universe. Maybe there's a higher intelligence.
Oh my God, Ali, you don't think that's ridiculous?
No,
I'm disappointed in you, Ali.
I don't think it's ridiculous. I think it's
is.
When it comes to another a higher intelligence, that intelligence could be the laws of physics. I'm agnostic about that.
No,
I am. I wrote this in my book too. I'm agnostic about it. But when it comes
that doesn't mean anything. People say agnostic as if it means agnostic. I'm agnostic about everything except my own existence. Okay.
No, 50-50. I'm 50-50 agnostic.
Holy shit, Ali. Okay, we need to talk.
I want to come back to Ali's point because Ali was talking about how, you know, based on what we know, when the brain dies, when there's damage done to the brain, we have the most plausible conclusion is that is just death and that's it.
Yeah. Even if you have a higher intelligence out there, that's a reality either way.
Yep, I agree with you, and that is why I said if there's intelligence, I wasn't comparing it to the materialist perspective. I said if there is intelligence, which afterlife possibility is the most plausible? And I submit to you that it's reincarnation. That's all that I was doing.
Why?
All right, so
okay, never mind. I'm not gonna.
We already talked about why. Okay, so we disagreed on that. That's okay. But we got your perspective. I think we've already talked about. You've made your point. We made our point. But we are kind of running out of time, Armin.
I just want to know, like, why from everything about us, people have picked consciousness over the thing that is holy and divine and connected to the universe and stays. Why not your shit? Why not your hair? What is it?
Because it's obvious, Armin.
Why? Tell me.
Your existence. It's the ground of anything that you
see. This is because we are so self-centered, we are so self-obsessed that we want to make instead of making us a small part of the universe, we want to make the whole universe part of us. That's what it is about.
There's a legitimate experience where you can experience being one with all that is.
I had a dream as a kid one time when I experienced being an eagle flying over a desert. Like, doesn't mean, it doesn't mean nothing. Experiences are just like the fact. In fact, it's interesting to me. If when you get high and experience other things, that should tell you about how unreliable your experiences are.
There's definitely limitations to subjectivity. There's limitations to science and philosophy as well. There's limitations, definitely, and that's why the utilization of all three is significant. Or the appreciation of it, that you have to use all three. The appreciation of all three is significant.
I only appreciate...
Okay, let
science
me
is the only way people...
No, go ahead.
Last thing, Ali.
Okay.
The future has to be where the materialist skeptical perspective and the spiritual perspective coincide. Where human temperaments are able to have avenues to express themselves and to express what they think is going on with the nature of reality. We cannot eliminate spirituality. Can we eliminate dogmatism and tribalism and nationalism and divisiveness over identity politics and stuff like that? Can we undermine superstition and truth claims based on insufficient evidence? Absolutely we can. But that does not take away spirituality and the possibility that there's divinity and intelligence or higher reality. I think that's a question that we should continue to explore.
If we do it right, it does. If we do it right, it does.
Yeah. I would actually largely agree with that. The only parts I wouldn't agree with, like, I wouldn't necessarily call it spirituality. You know, I'd call it maybe so I don't really have a word for it. Something transcendental that all of us experience, but is intangible. Huh?
Dawkins and Harris don't have any problems calling it spirituality. Neil deGrasse.
Yeah, but what you call guys, what you call spirituality is different from what I or them call spirituality.
So okay,
different people mean different things.
But we get fine, that's okay. I don't perfectly. I don't necessarily. I wish there was a better term, but I would call it something sort of like transcendentalism. The other thing is, the
spirituality that these people use is completely materialistic.
Yeah. But the other thing that I would disagree with you, the only other thing I'd take out of there would be divinity. That's where we disagree. Otherwise, I completely agree. I think that there is subjective experience. I do think it matters. I don't think that we can drive any conclusions from it. I don't think that experience necessarily. I think experience can be largely an illusion. A lot of times it is. And there's no way we can, if it's not testable, there's nothing we can do about it. And we just have to go by what we know, the best of our knowledge.
Our subjective experiences are important because everything we feel and taste and enjoy is our subjective experiences. But it's not the tool. That's our subjective. Altering our subjective experiences in a pleasant way is the goal. The tool is not a good tool because our perceptions... It's a very flawed way of perceiving reality. And that's why we have science. Because through time, and not through tradition, through trial and error, we have find out the best way to figure out, to map reality in the most effective way. So we use, when I say science is the only way to figure out what reality is, it's not a dismissal of subjectivity, because we are trying to understand reality so we could alter our subjective experiences in a way that we're all experiencing joy and happiness. And at the end of the day, the whole point of all our goals is based on our subjective experiences. Nobody is dismissing the importance of that. Anyways.
Yeah.
Okay. Appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I partially agree with that too. I don't think it's a tool to arrive at objective truths, but I do think it's subjective experiences can be a tool to broaden the way that you think, to open up.
Existence.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. I think that it can be subjective experiences really matter and can really help when it comes to those things, to question, to broaden the scope with which you can question and inquire. Yeah.
Consciousness is primary. It's primary. There's no science or philosophy without consciousness.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen.
Okay, now we're going into places we disagree. I wanted to end on something where we agree.
No. But no,
even though
Ali, disagreement is necessary, dude. If we all thought the same, we would be like robots. thinking
Yeah.
and doing everything that everybody else is doing.
Yeah,
This
Well,
is
I think we
disagreements
did.
are fun.
We
Right.
did agree. We did
I agree
get
with
a
you on
lot of
that. I agree with you
There
on
we
that.
go. Now we all agree. But you did get a lot of that in this podcast. Farhan, I know there are two of us and there's one of you.
No, but
And,
what about no Patreon questions? Can
we
we
are
have-
getting to that. I know. I was going to
Yeah.
say. So I want to thank you for being a good sport and for taking this on. I mean, I think the fact that you are sitting there and you're able to like have these conversations and disagree, and we come from such different foundations. I think it's really good, and I wish a lot more people were like you.
But we need.
Armin, can
Yeah.
you read out the patron question?
No,
Because I'm
you-
on my phone now.
Oh
I'm on my
shit!
phone. I
Really,
can't see them.
guys, I'm gonna miss them. This is Ali's job usually. Can you guys, if I'm, can you guys?
We already mentioned some of them. There aren't a whole lot.
No, Moose Gal asked some very good questions that she didn't tag us properly, so it's not orange for me, so I can't find it right now. Moose, you need to put the @ symbol behind the tag, and then you need to put the secular jihadist as one word, not space. You ask a very good questions that I can't find anymore, Moose. You have where is it? Sorry, I'll
See,
find
my laptop's still at 3%, so hopefully I can find something. Okay.
Where is that? Where is that question, Moose?
Yeah, someone said I agree with Ali. That's great.
Yeah.
That's always a good thing.
Mm,
Then Razib said, "Shut up, Ali," which is also a good
Oh,
thing.
Mike said that's bullshit. The best way to get knowledge is to first eliminate subjectivity. That's what Mike was saying a couple of times. If he ever, he already asked that. Moose, you have to ask your question again. I know you really wanted us to ask your question. You have to type it again. Sorry, because it's so much chat here and I can't find it. Moose Gal.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, Moose is asking, one of the questions she's asking, I'm going to 3% on my laptop, is do we need to follow a religion to have morals?
of course not.
Oh.
Yeah,
No.
no, definitely not.
Oh, that she also asked. Oh, I remember her question. Do you think if we get rid of all of religion, the world would be a better place or not?
The whole John Lennon thing. I think. Listen, I think that religions, the way that we have them, are going to go away completely.
Mhm.
I do think that the spirituality that human beings have will revere the past and the archetypes, symbols, and methods that they've developed.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, no, but like for example, if we woke up tomorrow, and all Muslims said they don't believe in Islam anymore, and all Hindus said they don't believe in Hinduism anymore, and all Christians and all the Jews and everybody said they don't believe in that anymore. Do you think?
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. It's not about dogmatism. It's about spiritual. It's whether humanity continues to value subjective, spiritual.
What if they
reality.
don't? Like, if we woke up tomorrow and everybody was like, just science only, that's the only way. Do you think that would
We
be
would be reptilian robots. That's what we would be.
Oh my god.
No. There's no meaning. There's no emotion.
What?
It's pure logic. When there's two hemispheres of
We
the brain,
use logic so that we
there's
could be
two
happy.
hemispheres of the brain. You can't just use logic, mathematics. You have to appreciate the abstract, the spiritual, the feminine.
No, okay.
Razib wants to know what your Y chromosomal haplogroup is. Do you know? Have you ever done 23andMe? Because you said you had
DNA
Hindu
test.
ancestry.
Right. I did the ancestry DNA test. It's been a while since I looked at it.
I think
Razib is a population geneticist or a geneticist.
I think it's a huge misunderstanding when people say we need to use logic and science to understand reality. A lot of people are like, oh, but we need to have like poetry and art and emotions. No. Hold on. I'm just saying, like, nobody said we don't need those things. We don't. We're our emotions are important, but we just don't. Okay, when I'm enjoying my food, I'm enjoying my food. I'm not gonna. But when I'm trying to figure out what's the best and most effective way to get this food out of the ground, I'm not going to use my feelings. But once we use the logic and science, we use logic and science to get the food off the ground, now that I'm starting to enjoy it, now is the time to sit down and enjoy it. No, just
Agreed.
because.
So it's both hemispheres. It's not just the rational.
Exactly,
hemisphere.
but when it comes to finding the most effective ways of doing anything, we use logic and science. And then when it's time to now enjoy the fruits of our labor, is to that's a different thing for a different purpose.
So it's the utilization and appreciation of both hemispheres of the brain.
I mean, if we didn't enjoy our world, we wouldn't even be doing science, because the whole point of science is to figure out how to live better lives.
Right. So it's spirituality and rationality. It's both.
Yeah, but what my problem is when one of them gets into the realm of the other. When you try to use your emotions to find out what's real.
Okay, fair. I agree with that.
All right.
Okay.
So, the only so I went through all the questions, and most of the stuff we've covered, and most of them, the vast majority are just comments. But I do have one from Mike, so we'll end with this. He said 99% of all created traditions are gone. Does it mean that there's anything good about the idea of tradition, or the opposite? And I'd add to that by saying, I'd quote Woody Allen, and he said, "Tradition is the illusion of permanence." Right? Because this is the idea. We all want everything to stay the same. And tradition gives us that illusion that everything's staying the same, when that's just not how reality works. So it kind of contradicts the whole idea of evolution and change and everything moving forward and progressing, as you said.
Right, I agree. But here's the thing. That's why I thoroughly embrace postmodernism, which says exactly what you just said. There is an evolution. Change is necessary. Growth is happening. This is something that Hinduism thoroughly embraces. Mystical traditions should generally embrace change and evolution. It depends on what you do with traditionalism. If you're valuing where we've come from and the knowledge that the past has developed, and you're taking the good and letting go of that which is destructive and no longer is obsolete, then that's fine. I'm not a pure traditionalist, and I don't think anybody should be a pure traditionalist. Those are the pure traditionalists. Do not want change. They do not want evolution. They want to keep everything the same. And that's not the way forward, for sure.
Belief in leprechauns also allows change. Belief in leprechauns also doesn't have a problem with atheism, and allows people to believe in different things and evolve and change.
Here's the thing. I mean, if you smoke some DMT, I'll tell you what, you're going to see all sorts of leprechauns.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't make leprechauns any more real.
I dare you to say that after.
I need you. Do you ever come up to Toronto, Farhan?
That's actually a very good example.
It's been a minute, but I'm going to come back to Canada.
Okay, so here's what we got to do. You got to come up here, all right? And then I want to know about your experience. I want to know what it's like. So you and me and Samir are going to get together.
Oh, for sure, bro. Hell
yeah, Samir and I will get babysitters during that time. And we're just going to go out somewhere.
Ali, if you come back and say that there's consciousness behind the universe, I'm going to...
I dare you.
I may come back.
Ali, if you
go... I'll come back and I'll tell Armin, I'm like, Armin, it was really fucking persuasive. I can't do this podcast anymore.
Our patrons, dear patrons, if you guys, if you are interested in being a co-host on Secular Jihadists, if we lose Ali to Wu, there's a position open. Okay.
That's gonna be great. Okay, Farhan, man, thank you very much.
All right.
It's really late here in Toronto. I'm East. Are you East Coast too?
East Coast, totally. Yeah.
Oh, so it's the same time. So we're getting really late. So I gotta go. It's been very vibrant. It was thoroughly enjoyable. This is going to be a lot of fun to listen to on audio. Armin, I'm sorry if I was hard on you.
This is the most fun I had. This is the most fun. This is the most fun.
It was awesome.
I love the Armin. Okay, so this was...
Yeah.
I'd love to definitely come up to Toronto. We should all hang out together.
And also, if you come to Vancouver, let me know. Let's hang out.
For sure, bro. For sure. Absolutely, man. Anytime. Love and appreciate both of you. Keep doing what you're doing. And like I said, I love the fact that there's skeptics who are ex-Muslim, atheists that are ex-Muslim, challenging the ridiculousness of traditional religions and superstitions. So go for it. I think that it's awesome.
Thank you.
Amen to that.
All
That's great.
And thank you, Mike and Moose. Mike is saying, I love such conversations. And Razib, Moose, we can't read any more questions. But yeah, thank you guys. Who else was in the live chat? Everybody else that left as well. Love you guys. And yeah, see you next week.
All right, take care.
Bye.